Chapter 2477, How Vile. Chapter 2477, How Vile. Granny Gong had seen the painting and thought, "There's no use painting it if you're not going to let her see it." But His Royal Highness would never willingly show it to Feng Wu. He threw it away right after he finished it. Granny Gong knew where the painting was. It was crumpled up behind a vase, and she had made sure that it was still there. She was going to lead Feng Wu there when she visited, and let her discover it. It was a very subtle plan. Knowing nothing about this plan, Feng Wu went to the study with Granny Gong. Granny Gong chatted with Feng Wu as she cleaned the room. "Miss Wu, what do you want to ask me?" Granny Gong didn't move as quickly as usual. They wouldn't have any excuse to stay here if she cleaned up the room too fast. Preoccupied with her beautiful master and Bao Er, Feng Wu didn't notice anything unusual. Moreover, it would never occur to her that Granny Gong would try to help Jun Linyuan this way. Feng Wu began to ask about Bao Er. Bao Er. Granny Gong slowly put away the books and began to wipe everything clean with a piece of cloth. "Yes. Could you tell me more about her?" Feng Wu joined in, helping Granny Gong to clean the room. She couldn't bring herself to watch Granny Gong do everything on her own. Granny Gong liked Feng Wu even more. But she still remembered the question, "May I ask why you want to know about Bao Er?" Feng Wu said, "Someone told me that Bao Er is the person His Royal Highness cares about the most." Granny Gong was infuriated. What a vile suggestion. She and Feng had been doing all they could to get things going between His Royal Highness and Feng Wu, but someone was trying to sabotage this relationship. "Before I answer your question, may I ask who told you that?" Granny Gong never forgave her enemies. Feng Wu had no reason to cover for Zhuo Qinghuan, so she said, "It was Zhuo Qinghuan." "I knew it." Granny Gong took a deep breath, took out a notebook and started writing. Feng Wu was intrigued. "Granny Gong, what's that?" She then saw the title on the front page, "My Enemies." Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Granny Gong said, "I'm getting old, and my memory isn't as good as before. So whenever I have an enemy, I write down their name in this notebook. After I take my revenge, I'll cross out that name. Convenient, isn't it? This way, I'll never leave anyone out. It's been a while since anyone has dared to offend me, however, so I haven't been writing down any names." TT sounded like she missed the old days. Feng Wu felt that she had discovered a new side to Granny Gong. Ahem. Granny Gong put away the notebook and cleared her throat. "Right, Bao Er. Miss Wu, you'll see why I don't like Miss Zhuo. She was trying to mislead you and make you jealous when she said that Bao Er was the person His Royal Highness cares about the most. Luckily, you're the cleverest girl. I'll tell you all about it. Bao Er is only 5 years old, and her mother was the late sister of His Majesty. After she passed away, the girl was put under His Royal Highness's care. And that Zhuo Qinghuan was trying to make you feel jealous of a 5-year-old girl. That's just despicable." Chapter 2478, About Bao Er. Chapter 2478, About Bao Er. Feng Wu cleared her throat. Granny Gong was so bold. "Granny Gong, she's the daughter of the Zhuo family, and the Sacred Lady of Firmament Palace. Aren't you afraid of her?" "Why should I be? It's not like she's going to marry His Royal Highness." Granny Gong said grumpily, "Miss Wu, don't worry. You're the only one His Royal Highness is fond of." Abashed, Feng Wu stomped her foot. "Granny Gong, what are you talking about? She was here to talk about Bao Er." Granny Gong glanced at Feng Wu. The girl was blushing, and she looked like a blossoming flower in the morning sunlight. In all the years she had served at court, Granny Gong had seen a lot of beautiful women, but none of them could compare with Feng Wu. She knew that she had said enough about Jun Linyuan's feelings. Revealing too much would only ruin the moment. Hence, she changed the subject to Bao Er. "Princess Bao Er is right here in this manor." Feng Wu's eyes widened. "Really? I've never heard anyone mention it." Granny Gong sighed. "Princess Bao Er has been in poor health since she was born. We've used all the rare and precious medicines on her, and they're the only reason she has survived, but a year ago, I heard young Lord Feng talk about an immortal spiritual fruit, which can only be found once every 1,000 years. If they could find it, maybe Princess Bao Er could be cured. Therefore, His Royal Highness went to northern border city in person. But His Royal Highness came back without the fruit. That was probably the first time he had failed a task. His Royal Highness then shut himself in his room for a long time. Princess Bao Er wasn't doing well, and her health was slipping. In the end, His Royal Highness went to see Master Linghu at Wandering Temple. Master Linghu hardly ever leaves his temple, but because he and His Royal Highness are good friends, he came here and sealed Princess Bao Er with spiritual essence. Sealed, Feng Wu grew a little pale. The immortal spiritual fruit that had enabled her to cultivate again was also the medicine that could save Bao Er. Jun Linyuan found the fruit, but she stole it from him. If someone tried to steal a medicine that could save her beautiful master, she would probably kill that person. At that thought, she panicked a little. Granny Gong didn't know what was going on in her mind. She sighed and went on. If he hadn't done that, Princess Bao Er might have died. After that procedure, however, she's been lying in a coma ever since. You can't even tell that she's still alive. Feng Wu said, "You mean she's in a vegetative state?" Granny Gong said, "Yes. She's been like that for almost a year, and things are getting worse." Feng Wu asked, "Did Master Linghu leave any instructions?" Although he had tricked her a few times, he was still a capable cultivator. Granny Gong said, "Yes." Feng Wu asked, "What did he say?" Granny Gong said, "Master Linghu said that his treatment would only give Princess Bao Er 1 more year. That time is almost up." Feng Wu clenched her fists. That was why she hadn't heard any news about Bao Er in the past year. Chapter 2479, Jun Linyuan's Painting. Chapter 2479, Jun Linyuan's Painting. As it turned out, Bao Er had been in a coma this whole time. Given what Jun Linyuan was like, he definitely wouldn't want other people to talk about her. That was why Feng Wu hadn't heard any news about Bao Er. If Sui Qingwan hadn't brought it up. Can anyone help Bao Er? What about the best physician in the empire? Feng Wu asked. Granny Gong said, Master Linghu is the best physician in the empire. Feng Wu looked perplexed. Granny Gong said, Firmament Palace is good at training physicians, and the old master has helped Bao Er before. She said she would figure something out, but so far she hasn't sent us anything. I don't think she knows what to do either. Given the chance, everyone would want to do Jun Linyuan a favor. Feng Wu clenched her fists. Can I see Bao Er? Granny Gong shook her head. No one is allowed to see her without His Royal Highness's permission. She then added, the late princess's death is related to His Royal Highness. Feng Wu looked perplexed. That was why Jun Linyuan cared about Bao Er so much. She wondered what happened back then. Granny Gong didn't want to bother Feng Wu with Bao Er's matter, because she was concerned about something else. The old master of Firmament Palace was Sui Qingwan's teacher. If Sui Qingwan came to see Bao Er, using her master as an excuse, she might even move into the Crown Prince's residence. If that happened, that would be a lot of trouble. The Crown Prince and Feng Wu hadn't acknowledged their relationship yet. Whenever the Crown Prince made a move, Feng Wu would run away. They couldn't afford any intruders. Granny Gong grew anxious. Wait, why did His Royal Highness throw this here? Granny Gong picked up a piece of crumpled paper from behind a vase. She smoothed it out on the desk. It's a painting. Can it be Bao Er? Granny Gong knew that if she suggested that it was a portrait of Feng Wu, the girl would run away immediately. So, she used Bao Er as an excuse. Bao Er. Feng Wu was intrigued. She moved closer, only to see herself in the painting. It really was her. In the painting, she wore a red dress. Her skin was flawless, and there was a proud look on her face. Feng recognized it right away. It was one of Jun Linyuan's paintings. One could copy that style. Miss Wu, it's you. It's so pretty. Granny Gong chuckled. Everyone says that anything created by His Royal Highness is worth a small fortune. This painting alone is more valuable than the street outside. Look, there are some written words as well. Granny Gong pointed to the left of the painting. The sovereign descends to the world. The phoenix soars above the land. How nice! Granny Gong was amazed. Not those words again. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Granny Gong said, only His Royal Highness can come up with such a wonderful expression. On the other side of the wall, Jun Linyuan smiled when he heard this. He was very pleased with himself as well. Feng Wu said, what's so great about that? Chapter 2480, Terminally Ill. Chapter 2480, Terminally Ill. Granny Gong was perplexed. What? Feng Wu said. Plus, His Majesty came up with those words, not His Royal Highness. Granny Gong said. No, I watched His Royal Highness write these words. That was before His Majesty arrived. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Granny Gong said, Miss Wu, His Royal Highnesses. Feng Wu said, I need to see him right now. To be more precise, I need to see Bao Er. Granny Gong said, His Royal Highness is cultivating in the training room. Feng Wu said, then I'll go to the training room. That was indeed where she found Jun Linyuan. The Crown Prince wore a black robe and had his hands behind his back. Feng Wu told him that she wanted to see Bao Er. Jun Linyuan studied her. His eyes were so bright that they made Feng Wu nervous. She thought he was going to say no, but he snorted and nodded. Since when was Jun Linyuan so easily persuaded? Feng Wu rubbed her nose and found it hard to believe. She didn't expect to meet Bao Er in this manner. The girl was inside a golden palace. They carefully cleaned themselves before going in. They had to cover their mouths and noses, wear shoe covers, and put on extra robes. Bao Er was on a cold white jade bed. She was tiny, her face was without color, and she was all skin and bones. She looked lifeless. Seeing Bao Er like this, Feng Wu was filled with guilt. If she hadn't stolen the fruit, maybe Bao Er wouldn't be in this state. Feng Wu wanted to check her pulse, but a person suddenly stepped out and stopped her. She frowned at the stern old maid. The look in the old maid's eyes was as sharp as a dagger. Leave us, Jun Linyuan ordered. The old maid immediately backed away with her head lowered. Feng Wu asked quietly, may I check her pulse? I want to see how she's doing. If it's possible, want to cure her. She wanted to do all she could to make it up to Bao Er. Jun Linyuan gave her a long look and nodded. Feng Wu wiped her hands clean before she checked Bao Er's pulse. She then realized how grave Bao Er's condition was. She had never seen someone so ill. The girl had as many as 20 conditions. There was a lump in her head, and Feng Wu couldn't tell yet if it was malignant. There was something wrong with her nose, as well as her throat. Her heart was the most severely affected organ. Bao Er had been born with a heart smaller than usual. Her heartbeat was also slower than a normal person's. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. She tucked Bao Er in and nodded at Jun Linyuan. She let out a sigh after they left the palace. Did you make this golden palace for her? Feng Wu asked curiously. Chapter 2481 You Knew. Chapter 2481. You knew? Jun Linyuan gave her a long look and nodded. Before she went into a coma, Bao Er used to want to go out all the time, so I made this golden palace for her. It can be lifted off the ground and carried around. But she's such a kind girl. She said that she didn't want to trouble other people, so she never actually went out in it. Jun Linyuan's voice was still cold, but Feng Wu could tell that he cared about Bao Er. She had never seen him so frustrated. Even Jun Linyuan couldn't have everything he wanted. It pained Feng Wu to see him like this. I've examined Bao Er, Feng Wu said softly. Her condition is very severe. There are at least 20 things going on, and some are more severe than others. The trouble is that when I treat one of them, it may affect her other illnesses. It's very unpredictable. That's also what Master Linghu said, Jun Linyuan said calmly. Feng Wu bit her lower lip. She had the impulse to tell him the truth. Maybe he would forgive her. But he could also kill her for what she had done. She didn't know how he would react. She stole a glance at Jun Linyuan. From this angle, he was irresistibly handsome. There was no expression on his face. Guilt overwhelmed Feng Wu when she thought about Bao Er. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. I'm sorry. She bowed at the golden palace. Bao Er, I'm sorry for stealing your immortal spiritual fruit. Because of that, You missed your best chance. You've lost a year because of me. I'm not treating you because I want to make you like me. I owe you a life. You're still so young. You should live to walk out of the Golden Palace and see the world with your own eyes. I promise that I'll cure you. You'll grow up as a healthy kid again. Jun Linyuan looked at Feng Wu and smiled a little. One stole your immortal spiritual fruit. Feng Wu met his gaze. One was Feng Xiaowu in northern border city. She closed her eyes. She was ready for his rage and his powerful strike. But nothing happened. Feng Wu opened her eyes and looked at Jun Linyuan in confusion. Jun Linyuan's eyes glimmered like stars. He wasn't angry. You knew. Feng Wu's stomach lurched. You knew all along, didn't you? Since when? Jun Linyuan didn't answer. He walked into a pavilion and sat down. Intrigued, Feng Wu followed and sat down opposite him. Chapter 2482. His Royal Highness is serious. Chapter 2482. His Royal Highness is serious. Granny Gong had trained the servants well. A set of teaware was always out in the pavilion, and the stove was always lit, no matter how often or not the Crown Prince was there. The tea would still be ready even if Jun Linyuan never went there for a whole year. Everything in the residence was well prepared this way. The Crown Prince made some tea and poured some into Feng Wu's cup. Feng Wu held the cup in her hands and went on asking questions. Her eyes looked like pools of water in the moonlight. When did you find out? You cherish Bao Er so much. Don't you hate me for what I did? I lied to you. I thought you would hit me. Feng Wu was perplexed. This wasn't like the Jun Linyuan she thought she knew. Jun Linyuan's eyes twinkled. They were so close that Feng Wu could count his eyelashes. How could someone be so good-looking? Even his hair was nicer than other people's. Even girls would envy his face. How crazy was that? Feng Wu was infatuated. Jun Linyuan poked Feng Wu in the forehead. Feng Wu woke up from her reverie and put on a serious face once more. Jun Linyuan was speechless. It was the bowknot, said Jun Linyuan. What bowknot? Feng Wu was dumbfounded. She searched her memory. She knew what he meant. It was that time. During the entrance examination for Imperial College, she had needed to enter a secret land covered by ice and snow. Jun Linyuan was there as well and was injured. She had tied a bowknot when she treated his wounds. That was over a year ago. You knew all along. But you're not mad at me? I was mad at you. Did you want to kill me? Why not? Feng Wu blurted out. But she realized that she had asked the wrong question. Jun Linyuan was staring at her now. His eyes were frighteningly bright, and she thought she would lose herself in them. Sensing that things were getting out of hand, Feng Wu turned around to run away. Tell me, why wouldn't I? Jun Linyuan asked behind her. There was a hint of anxiety in his voice. Feng Wu felt that his gaze would burn a hole in her back. How awkward. She couldn't run away like this, but she didn't dare turn around either. She wasn't stupid. Before, Jun Linyuan was too proud to speak frankly, but now, he was beginning to express his feelings. For instance, he had used fireworks to put those words in the sky. Feng Wu didn't want to face him. She was scared. Although she was a decisive person when dealing with other things, when it came to her feelings, she was a coward. Answer my question, the Crown Prince teased her. Feng Wu mumbled, how should I know? Chapter 2483. His Royal Highness takes the initiative. Chapter 2483. His Royal Highness takes the initiative. When Feng Wu looked up again, she saw that the Crown Prince was standing in front of her. When he took a step forward, she took a step back. Thump. She bumped into a pillar of the pavilion. Jun Linyuan then raised his hands and trapped her in the tiny space between his arms and the pillar. She had nowhere to go now. Gosh. She wished that he wasn't so serious. It made her feel rather awkward. She wanted to push Jun Linyuan away. But of course, the Crown Prince wasn't someone she could easily get rid of. No matter how hard she tried, he didn't move an inch. He decided that he had waited long enough. This girl couldn't run from him forever. He lowered his head and moved closer. Thump. Feng Wu stomped on his foot. Jun Linyuan, stop teasing me. I'm really mad. Feng Wu glared at him. Jun Linyuan didn't know what she wanted. Everyone had been telling him that Feng Wu was in love with him. Whenever he left her alone, she would flirt with him. But when he took the initiative, she couldn't run away fast enough. Feng Wu, what on earth do you want? The crown prince snapped. I. Feng Wu didn't know how to answer that question. The crown prince moved closer. Do you have feelings for me or not? OMG. Feng Wu was too shy to answer that question. I don't know what you're talking about. Feng Wu shoved him and wanted to run away. But Jun Linyuan caught her by her wrist. Speak. He stared at her, determined to get an answer out of her today. Feng Wu was so embarrassed that she wanted to dig a hole and hide in it. She might have experienced many things, but she had never been in a relationship before. That question was too direct. Moreover, she still had a crush on her beautiful master. She believed that her master was her real Prince Charming. Don't push me. She glared at Jun Linyuan. You don't get to decide what I want to do. Answer my question, said the crown prince. Do you have feelings for me or not? He stared at Feng Wu. An idea struck Feng Wu, and she asked, Do you have feelings for me then? That rendered the crown prince speechless. He was still feeling perplexed when Feng Wu pushed him away and ran out of the pavilion. She waved at him saying, Aren't we best friends? Friends? Jun Linyuan's face darkened. Feng Wu said, So we're best buddies. The crown prince said, Say that again and I'll. Feng Wu said, Stop right there. The crown prince glared at her. Feng Wu jumped onto the wall and said, I need to go home now. You can figure out the answer and stop pushing me. Bye. She successfully escaped again. Feng and Granny Gong exchanged resigned looks. They had failed again. Luckily, their crown prince was a little more motivated than before, although he still had a long way to go before he knew how to express his feelings. I guess things are getting a little better. Feng looked at Granny Gong. Granny Gong didn't know what to say. Chapter 2484. Is her cover blown? Chapter 2484. Is her cover blown? Let's just say that good things take a long time to come. We still have to wait for a while before anything happens. But you're right about one thing. His Royal Highness is getting better at expressing himself. It's a good thing. Relationships were seldom straightforward. If neither side would take the first step, the relationship would never go further. The Crown Prince had begun to push Feng Wu now. But it won't be easy to make His Royal Highness admit that he has feelings for Miss Feng Wu, said Granny Gong. The beginning is always the hardest. It'll get easier. Granny Gong and Feng smiled wryly at each other. At the same time, Feng Sun was rushing toward the Crown Prince's residence at top speed. He had many things to tell the Crown Prince. He needed to tell Boss Jun that Feng Wu was the ugly girl. Feng Wu had stolen their immortal spiritual fruit. Feng Wu was the only person who had ever defeated him. How annoying. Feng Sun was going to rush into the house when he paused. No, I can't run inside like this. An idea struck him. The immortal spiritual fruit could have saved Bao Er, who was very dear to Boss Jun. If he learned the truth, he might kill Xiao Wu. Even if he spared Xiao Wu's life, would he drain her blood and give it to Bao? After all, Xiao Wu's blood now contained the ingredients of the fruit. Gosh, would Xiao Wu survive that? Feng Sun grew anxious. Although he had been very angry when he first heard the news, she was still his younger sister. He was still angry at her for what she did. But he didn't want her to be harmed either. He stomped his foot, turned around, and ran in a different direction. Fallen Star Yard. Little Feng Wu, get your ass over here. Feng Sun jumped over the wall and into the yard and rushed into the house. Feng Wu's formation was designed not to stop Feng Sun, so he wasn't hindered. Sun, you're here. Lady Ling was glad to see him. She liked Feng Sun for his liveliness. She thought that Jun Linyuan frowned too much. Aunt Ling. Feng Sun immediately slowed down when he saw Lady Ling. For some reason, Lady Ling gave him the feeling that she was even more distinguished than His Majesty. He couldn't explain it. It was instinctual. When Lady Ling was around, he was very polite. Aunt Ling, where is Xiaowu? Feng Sun forced a smile. Lady Ling pointed at the courtyard next door. She's cultivating. Aunt Ling, I'll go talk to her. Feng Sun was such a good boy in front of Lady Ling. But when he jumped over the wall and landed in the courtyard of the Feng Manor, he looked like he was going to kill someone. He found Feng Wu in an old tree. She exhaled when she finished cultivating. Little Feng Wu, you're such a devil. Get down here right now. Feng Sun pointed at Feng Wu. Feng Wu felt a little guilty. Chapter 2485, He's going to kill you. Chapter 2485, He's going to kill you. She wondered if her cover was blown. But she had to face it sooner or later. She couldn't run from it forever. Feng Wu jumped out of the tree and met Feng Sun's gaze. She was ready to embrace the storm. Feng Sun stared at Feng Wu like there were flames in his eyes. Tell me the truth. Are you Feng Xiaowu of Northern Border City? Feng Sun said matter-of-factly, What kind of an answer was that? Feng Sun wanted to smack her on the head. Think very carefully before you answer. Are you really the ugly girl who stole Boss Jun's immortal spiritual fruit? Feng Wu said, Stop with the already. You really are her. Feng Wu said, Yes, really. Feng Sun said, Why did you admit it so fast? Aren't you afraid of me? He suddenly felt that he was even more reluctant to face the truth. How could that be? Feng Wu, Feng Sun shouted. Why do you sound so righteous? Do you remember what you did? Feng Wu listened in silence. Feng Sun grew angrier as he went on. I was so nice to you, and I promised Boss Jun that I would take responsibility for everything you did. And what did you do? Is that how you repay my kindness? Feng Wu said, Feng Sun raised his voice. You stole the immortal spiritual fruit. How could you? Do you know why we needed that fruit? Bao Er was dying. You stole the fruit, and Bao Er has been lying there ever since. I can't believe it. I'm so sorry. Feng Wu tugged on his sleeve and said in a pitiful tone. Feng Sun stared at her. It's too late for that. Feng Wu wailed a little. Feng Sun frowned at her. He was genuinely angry because his sister had crossed the line. However, when she took his hand with that lost puppy look on her face, he couldn't bring himself to shout at her, let alone smack her. On his way here, Feng Sun had decided that he would teach Feng Wu a lesson. Brother Feng. Feng Wu looked like an abandoned kitten. Feng Sun took a deep breath and glared at Feng Wu. Do you know what you've done wrong? Feng Wu said, Yes, I do. Feng Sun said, That was fast. Feng Wu chuckled. Feng Sun glared at her. You shouldn't be laughing. Feng Wu whimpered. Feng Sun didn't know what to say. When he saw her big eyes and adorable face, he couldn't bring himself to say anything harsh. He said, I can live with the fact that you've lied to me, but do you know how serious the consequence is? The fruit was supposed to be Bao Er's medicine. If Boss Jun knows that you are the ugly girl, he'll kill you. Feng Wu said, I don't think so. Chapter 2486 Untitled. Chapter 2486 Untitled. Feng Sun said, You don't think so? If he's angry enough, he'll kill your entire family. Just remember, don't let Boss Jun know. Feng Wu was touched. Feng Sun was Jun Lingyuan's most loyal friend, but to protect Feng Wu, he chose to hide the truth from Jun Lingyuan. It was a hard choice for Feng Sun. Feng Wu said, He already knows. Feng Sun said, You can't let him. What did you just say? Feng Wu said, He already knows. Oh my God. Feng Sun was so shocked that he almost fell over. His first reaction was to push Feng Wu toward the front gate. You should leave now. Don't bother packing. Just run as fast as you can. Feng Wu said, It's all right. Feng Sun said, Of course it's not all right. He's going to kill you. Feng Wu said, He didn't get angry at me. Feng Sun stared at her. Are you sure? Feng Wu said, Moreover, I've seen Bao Er in the Golden Palace. Feng Sun looked her up and down, trying to make sure that she wasn't harmed. He hesitated. Are you sure he really knows? Feng Wu nodded. Feng Sun said, And you're still all right? Feng Wu nodded. Feng Sun asked, Did he do anything to you? Define anything, thought Feng Wu. He had pressed her against a pillar, so she hesitated for a moment. Feng Sun took a deep breath. Stay put. I'll go see Boss Jun now. He dashed off after that. A moment later he paused. He then smacked his head. That wasn't right. He was here to tell Feng Wu off, but right now, he was protecting her. How incredible. But he decided that his top priority was her safety. He ran to the Crown Prince's residence. Boss Jun, did you know that Xiao Wii? Jun Linyuan was cultivating when Feng Sun rushed into the room. Jun Linyuan glanced at him and went back to his training. Feng Sun was worried sick by the time Jun Linyuan finished. Only then did Jun Linyuan put on a robe and walk out of the hot spring. Boss Jun, did you really know already? Feng Sun asked anxiously. Yes, Jun Linyuan said calmly. Feng Sun was shocked. Are you not going to kill her? Jun Linyuan found the question idiotic. He lay down on a chair and used his spiritual essence to dry his hair. How is that possible? You care about Bao Er so much. If it wasn't for Xiao Wu, Bao Er wouldn't have. She's going to make it up to me. The Crown Prince sipped his wine. With what? Herself, said the Crown Prince confidently. Hearing that, Feng wanted to shake his head. If only things were that easy. Of course, as the steward, he would never say that out loud. He didn't even frown. Chapter 2487 Untitled. Chapter 2487 Untitled. Feng Sun stared at Jun Linyuan. Boss Jun, did she really say that? Did she agree to use herself as compensation if she can't cure Bao Er? The Crown Prince nodded. Feng Sun let out a breath of relief. That's great. I was so worried that you would kill her. Feng found Feng Sun's worry to be utterly idiotic. Kill Feng Wu. His Royal Highness would probably kill himself first. Just then, someone outside called, Your Royal Highness, Miss Qinghuan is requesting an audience. Zhu Qinghuan. Feng Sun was surprised. Boss Jun, I didn't know that you were still talking to her. As Jun Lingyuan's future brother-in-law, Feng Sun immediately raised his guard. Jun Linyuan was about to turn down the request, when the servant said, Your Royal Highness, here's a letter from Miss Qinghuan. Jun Linyuan quickly read it. His face darkened a little when he read one of the lines, and he said, Bring her in. Feng Sun was curious about what had changed Jun Linyuan's mind. He grabbed the letter, and saw that Zhu Qinghuan said that she was here to see Bao Er on behalf of her master. Can Zhu Qinghuan help Bao Er? Feng Sun asked suspiciously. Jun Linyuan said, I don't know, but her master did indeed help Bao Er once. Feng Sun said, So you owe her a favor? Jun Linyuan nodded. Feng Sun asked, Haven't you returned the favor yet? Jun Linyuan snorted. Do you think she'll let me off the hook so easily? Feng Sun nodded. You have a point. Of course, she would save it for something more important. What a cunning old hag. Zhu Qinghuan arrived at that moment. She held her head high, looking as proud as a peacock. However, that wouldn't impress anyone in this residence. On her way in, she saw that the servants were busy with their own work, and no one even glanced at her. That displeased Zhu Qinghuan. When she entered the main hall, Jun Linyuan had already changed into his formal attire. Zhu Qinghuan had thought that after everything Jun Linyuan had put her through, she would feel angry when she met him again. However, she couldn't help but be awed by his handsome face. Her heart pounded. Jun Linyuan glanced at her. Are you here to deliver a message for your master? Yes. Zhu Qinghuan wanted to show him her best side. Every move she made seemed to be carefully measured, from her tone to her gait. One couldn't find a more refined young lady. She was as graceful as a queen. She believed that the Crown Prince would surely be impressed. Poor Zhu Qinghuan. She had no idea that Jun Linyuan would prefer Feng Wu's pouting face over any of her well-trained demeanor. Needless to say, Jun Linyuan wasn't impressed. Neither was Feng Sun. He found Zhu Qinghuan so pretentious. What's the message then? He urged her. Chapter 2488, Jun Linyuan vs. Zhu Qinghuan. Chapter 2488 Jun Linyuan vs. Zhu Qinghuan. Zhu Qinghuan glanced at Feng Sun. She wondered if Feng Sun had told the crown prince about the ugly girl. But the crown prince didn't seem angry, so she assumed that Jun Linyuan still didn't know. Zhuoqingwan said, "After my master examined Bao Er, she said that the immortal spiritual fruit could save her. Your Royal Highness, did you find it?" Hearing that, Feng Sun knew what she was getting at. Before, he had found Zhuoqingwan to be a pretty and smart girl. He used to like her, because she was such a fast learner. However, after what she did recently, Feng Sun began to dislike her. And that question, of all things, why would she ask about the immortal spiritual fruit? She was obviously trying to incriminate Feng Wu. When Zhuoqingwan asked the question, she was looking at Feng Sun out of the corner of her eye. She thought that she had provided Feng Sun with the best opportunity. Why wouldn't he use it? Zhuoqingwan urged Feng Sun with her eyes. Feng Sun smirked. He knew that she wanted to use him, and found her plan ridiculous. Zhuoqingwan frowned. She didn't understand it. According to Mu Yaoyao, Feng Wu had put Feng Sun in a miserable state. Wouldn't he want to take revenge? It was said that Feng Sun always made his enemy pay. Zhuoqingwan stared at Feng Sun. Feng Sun snorted. "Are you trying to use me to defeat Feng Wu?" he thought. "Aren't you supposed to be the sacred lady with no worldly desires? You're very keen on eliminating your enemy now." Feng Sun returned her gaze with a mocking smile on his face. Zhuoqingwan was furious, but she was very good at controlling her emotions. When she turned to look at Jun Linyuan, there was already an affectionate look in her eyes. "We'll have a much better chance to cure Bao Er if we have the immortal spiritual fruit. I was told that Feng Wu seems to have one." Zhuoqingwan cut to the chase. Feng Sun wanted to protect Feng Wu, but Zhuoqingwan wouldn't let him. Feng Wu had to die. "I see." Jun Linyuan picked up his cup. That was a sign that the meeting was over. Zhuoqingwan flushed. "Damn you, Feng Wu. What did you put in His Royal Highness's head? With you around, I'll never win him back." At that thought, Zhuoqingwan stepped forward and said, "I heard that your Royal Highness knows Feng Wu well. Why don't we talk to her and borrow the fruit?" To her disappointment, the crown prince didn't react. Wasn't he supposed to be very smart? The crown prince glanced at Zhuoqingwan and asked coldly, "What are you getting at?" Zhuoqingwan said, "A year ago, Feng Wu stole the immortal spiritual fruit from you." She then kept her gaze on Jun Linyuan, trying to read his thoughts. But his face remained expressionless. Zhuoqingwan's hands grew cold. Why wouldn't he understand? "So?" Jun Linyuan asked indifferently. Feng Sun almost burst out laughing. Chapter 2489, Jun Linyuan vs. Feng Wu. Chapter 2489, Jun Linyuan vs. Feng Wu. Feng Sun couldn't understand it. Zhuoqingwan was so smart, but why did she behave like an idiot around Boss Jun? Zhuoqingwan already knew the answer, but she didn't want to admit it. Because if she did, it would mean that His Royal Highness cared about Feng Wu more than Bao Er. Back then, she had barely touched Bao Er, and the crown prince had looked like he was going to kill her. However, now that Feng Wu had taken the immortal spiritual fruit that could save Bao Er, he wasn't even angry. She assumed that he didn't know anything about it. Zhuoqingwan said, "Although it's been a year, the effect of the immortal spiritual fruit is still in Feng Wu's blood. If we use her blood as the base of..." Before she could finish, she felt a cold gaze on her. Her chest tightened. It was as if her heart was being squeezed, and the pain made her suck in her breath. The temperature seemed to drop, as if it was going to snow. It was freezing. Zhuoqingwan glanced at Jun Linyuan. She saw his brooding eyes, and she almost shivered. He knew. Zhuoqingwan realized that she had to admit the truth. Jun Linyuan knew that Feng Wu was the ugly girl, but he wasn't angry. This shouldn't be happening. Zhuoqingwan wanted to cry. This had been her best chance. She had thought that by playing this card, she would get rid of Feng Wu forever. But, was Feng Wu even human? His Royal Highness is fond of... No, there's no way that's it. I'll never admit that His Royal Highness is in love with Feng Wu. He's like this only because she's pretty. At that thought, Zhuoqingwan took a deep breath and fought back her anger. Zhuoqingwan calmed down. Feng Wu is only a small obstacle in your life. You were able to crush her 5 years ago. You can still crush her now. When Zhuo Qingwan opened her eyes, she was the unapproachable sacred lady once more. She bade the crown prince farewell and left the residence. She looked perfectly calm again. Feng Sun spat on the ground as soon as Zhuo Qingwan was gone. I thought she was here to treat Bao Er, but she was actually here to accuse my Xiaowu. My Xiaowu? The crown prince glanced at Feng Sun. Feng Sun immediately came back to his senses. I mean your Xiaowu. He didn't think Boss Jun would respond, but the latter actually nodded. He nodded. Feng Sun almost jumped. He couldn't believe his eyes. When Jun Linyuan walked away, Feng Sun didn't follow him. Instead, he grabbed Feng's sleeve. Feng, did you see that? Boss Jun nodded, right? Feng said, yes. Feng Sun scratched his head. So I was right. Boss Jun finally admits that he has feelings for little Feng Wu. It was a turning point. Chapter 2490, He Promised to Marry Me. Chapter 2490, He Promised to Marry Me. Zhuo Qingwan went back to Phoenix Yard. Tong Ke greeted her. She thought that after the amazing information she had gathered, the sacred lady would be able to defeat Feng Wu. However, Phoenix Yard was destroyed once more. Tong Ke felt that she had lost count of her master's tantrums. After Zhuo Qingwan was done venting her rage, Tong Ke summoned the servants. In less than an hour, Phoenix Yard was as good as new. When a maid walked past Tong Ke, she whispered, Miss Tong Ke, we're running out of new furniture. Get lost, Tong Ke said impatiently. If the sacred lady heard that, she would kill all of them. The maid bit her lower lip and quickly left. Tong Ke took a deep breath and went inside. Feng Wu, I'm impressed. Zhuo Qingwan smacked the table, her face twitching. I didn't think she would pose any sort of threat when I returned. I wouldn't have even bothered to glance at her. But what a surprise! She has put on quite the show. Zhuo Qingwan suddenly rose to her feet. Tong Ke wanted to say something, but hesitated. She wanted to remind the sacred lady that when she first returned, the rumor she spread was that the crown prince was deeply in love with her. Now, however, she and Feng Wu were competing over the crown prince. Zhuo Qingwan glared at Tong Ke. What's on your mind? Are you laughing at me? She sounded frustrated. Tong Ke sighed inwardly, but she feigned a terrified tone and knelt down. Miss Qingwan, I don't know anything. Zhuo Qingwan took a deep breath. She forced herself to calm down. She told herself, Zhuo Qingwan, you're the best. You have the true phoenix blood. And you're the one His Royal Highness is going to marry. Other women can never threaten your position. The crown prince's reaction had ruined Zhuo Qingwan's plan. She had thought that all she needed to do was marry Jun Linyuan, but now, he wouldn't even look at her. She glared at Tong Ke. I know what you're thinking. Tong Ke gritted her teeth and hoped that the sacred lady wouldn't say the unspeakable. Zhuo Qingwan only smirked. Feng Wu has seduced His Royal Highness, but it doesn't matter. All men like pretty girls, but that will pass. At the end of the day, he'll still be mine. Of course, said Tong Ke. She would never disagree with her master. Zhuo Qingwan seemed to be convincing herself. I have the true phoenix blood. Tong Ke said, yes, and all princes want to marry you. Zhuo Qingwan nodded and said coldly, but I want to marry His Royal Highness. Tong Ke was speechless. Even the vendors outside know what you want, she thought. Zhuo Qingwan stressed. He promised that he would marry me. That's why I'm doing this. Tong Ke could only keep nodding. Zhuo Qingwan was trying to convince Tong Ke as well as herself. Chapter 2491, Empress Dowager. Chapter 2491, Empress Dowager. Zhuo Qingwan insisted that Jun Linyuan had made the promise first, and she was only asking him to keep his promise. She sat down and started thinking. It would be very difficult to try and change Jun Linyuan's mind. Zhuo Qingwan then thought about Feng Sun and wondered if she could work on him. She had thought about it before. She would befriend Feng Sun and ask him to support her. That way, she would make a good impression on the crown prince. It was a good idea, but she couldn't use it because Feng Wu had beaten her to it. Zhuo Qingwan gritted her teeth. Feng Wu, you keep saying that you're not in love with His Royal Highness, but you made friends with Feng Sun first, and used him to get to His Royal Highness. How cunning. Since His Royal Highness's friend wouldn't work, she had to work on his family instead. Bao Er. Zhuo Qingwan shook her head. She wasn't capable enough at the moment to treat Bao Er. His Royal Highness's mother had passed away, and he didn't see eye to eye with His Majesty. That left her with only one candidate. The Empress Dowager. The old lady doted on the Crown Prince, and she was the only person whom Jun Linyuan was patient with. Zhuo Qingwan concluded that Jun Linyuan would definitely listen to the Empress Dowager. As long as she agreed, Zhuo Qingwan smiled a little. It seemed that she was going to visit the royal palace. She never did things that she wasn't confident about. To win over the Empress Dowager, she made a lot of preparations in advance. She needed to figure out what the old lady liked and disliked. The Zhuo family would help her with that. Mrs. Zhuo's eyes lit up when she heard the plan. Finally, her daughter was going to do something. She had been so proud. But now, she was asking about the Empress Dowager's preferences. What Mrs. Zhuo didn't know was that this was all part of Zhuo Qingwan's plan. She would never willingly fawn over any person. Zhuo Qingwan had no real respect for the Empress Dowager. But her hands were tied, and she had to do things she hated. For other people, it would be very difficult to meet the Empress Dowager. But the Zhuo family could visit the Empress Dowager almost whenever they wanted. Mrs. Zhuo took Zhuo Qingwan to Empress Dugu's palace first. Empress Dugu was pleased when Zhuo Qingwan, the sacred lady of Firmament Palace, came to pay her respects to her. Zhuo Qingwan was also her niece. Empress Dugu then took Zhuo Qingwan to see the Empress Dowager. Sinang Palace. The sacred lady. The Empress Dowager frowned a little. She remembered Zhuo Qingwan. The girl had been very proud since she was little. She behaved more like a princess than Jun Wuxia. The Empress Dowager didn't like girls who were too proud, so she didn't think much of Zhuo Qingwan. Two elderly maids served the Empress Dowager. One was Granny Lan. She was mild-tempered and rather liked Feng Wu. The other one was Granny Gui, who got along well with Empress Dugu. Chapter 2492, Zhuo Qingwan fawns on the Empress Dowager. Chapter 2492 Zhuo Qingwan fawns on the Empress Dowager. Granny Gui said, Miss Qingwan has the true phoenix blood. If His Royal Highness marries her, their children will have both bloodlines. Your Majesty, aren't you searching for a wife for His Royal Highness? Maybe Miss Qingwan can be a candidate. The Empress Dowager frowned. She only gestured at the servants to bring Empress Dugu and the others in. Empress Dugu was chuckling when she walked in. The Empress Dowager frowned, because she didn't like Empress Dugu. She wanted to protect Jun Linyuan, but Empress Dugu had never been friendly toward him. So the Empress Dowager had never liked her daughter-in-law. Empress Dugu knew that as well, but her family was here, so she had to pretend that she and the Empress Dowager were very close. Otherwise it would be so humiliating. Your Majesty, how was your day? Empress Dugu greeted her mother-in-law. The Empress Dowager glanced at Empress Dugu, but soon looked past her. She was looking at the people behind Empress Dugu, Mrs. Zhuo and Zhuo Qingwan. The Empress Dowager had expected Zhuo Qingwan to be as arrogant as she used to be, but she was wrong. When she looked at Zhuo Qingwan, the girl was smiling. A smile? The Empress Dowager couldn't believe her eyes. She looked again. Zhuo Qingwan was smiling sweetly at her. The Empress Dowager's heart almost skipped a beat. The arrogant girl from 5 years ago was fawning on the Empress Dowager. What a bright smile. The Empress Dowager hadn't liked the idea of marrying Zhuo Qingwan to Jun Linyuan at first, since the boy was already very cold. If his wife was equally cold, what would their life be like? The Empress Dowager was looking for a considerate girl with a warm smile. Right now, Miss Zhuo looked like a suitable candidate. Are you Zhuo Qingwan? The Empress Dowager was a little intrigued. Yes, Your Majesty. Zhuo Qingwan slowly walked up to the Empress Dowager and bowed. How graceful. The Empress Dowager and Granny Gui exchanged looks, and both were pleasantly surprised. Her movements were so accurate, It was like they had been measured with a ruler. The girl looked like she was born to live in the palace. Your Majesty, here's some snowy cream my master made for you. Firmament Palace was good at making both medicines and poisons. Zhuo Qinghuan knew that all women loved things that made them more beautiful. Although the Empress Dowager was an elderly woman, she still spent hours on skincare every day. Zhuo Qinghuan had chosen the perfect gift for her. The Empress Dowager was surprised to see the gift. Snowy cream? I use it all the time, but this one smells fresher. Zhuo Qinghuan nodded. The snowy cream sold in Firmament Pavilion has a similar formula, but the ones sold elsewhere are made by ordinary people, so they are not as effective. Chapter 2493, Preparing to Marry Jun Linyuan. Chapter 2493, Preparing to Marry Jun Linyuan. Your Majesty, this snowy cream was made by my master, and is the same cream that she uses every day. My master said that Your Majesty and her were best friends when you were young. Although the two of you haven't met each other for many years, she still cares about Your Majesty. Zhuo Qinghuan studied the Empress Dowager as she spoke. She didn't expect that the old lady would like her right away. As long as the Empress Dowager liked her better than before, she would achieve results. The Empress Dowager looked pleased when she heard that the master of Firmament Palace still cared about her. And the snowy cream was a very considerate gift. Seeing that Zhuo Qinghuan wasn't as arrogant as she had expected, the Empress Dowager wasn't as indifferent as before. Take a seat, said the Empress Dowager. Despite the change in her attitude, the Empress Dowager wasn't that easily impressed. It would take more than a few gifts to melt her heart. Wait, is Zhuo Qinghuan here? Jun Wuxia was there as well, and was surprised to see Zhuo Qinghuan. Zhuo Qinghuan nodded at her. That's the deluxe version of the snowy cream. Zhuo Qinghuan, did you give it to Grandma? Jun Wuxia asked curiously. Zhuo Qinghuan nodded. She didn't like Jun Wuxia because the princess was too proud for her liking. While other people called her Miss Qinghuan, Jun Wuxia kept addressing her by her full name. Jun Wuxia stared at Zhuo Qinghuan. Hey, why isn't there something for me? Wuxia. Empress Duga chided her. Jun Wuxia snorted. I see. She's sucking up to Grandma. Zhuo Qinghuan bit her lower lip, and disliked Jun Wuxia even more. The Empress Dowager looked from Zhuo Qinghuan to Jun Wuxia. She didn't say anything, but there was a pointed look in her eyes. Zhuo Qinghuan had always considered herself the respectable sacred lady of Firmament Palace. Now, however, a mere princess was talking to her that way. Zhuo Qinghuan was furious. However, she couldn't lose her temper now. To marry Jun Linyuan, she had to win these women's hearts first. At that thought, she took a deep breath and fought back her rage. She then smiled at Jun Wuxia. I still have a bottle in Firmament Pavilion. I thought I would keep it for Her Majesty for future use. Would you like me to fetch it for you? She asked Jun Wuxia. Jun Wuxia snorted. If you don't want to give it to me, just say so. Are you trying to say that I'm taking Her Majesty's face cream? Zhuo Qinghuan, you're such a schemer. Zhuo Qinghuan glared at Jun Wuxia and took a deep breath. She didn't know what to do with this rude princess. She couldn't control her temper for much longer. Empress Dugu wanted to cover her daughter's mouth and stop her from attacking one of their own. She smiled awkwardly and said, The two of you are cousins. Why are you quarreling? Wuxia, didn't you say that Qinghuan is your best friend? You went to her birthday party just the other day. Chapter 2494 Untitled. Chapter 2494 Untitled. That only made Jun Wuxia even more frustrated. She felt that she should never have gone to Zhuo Qinghuan's birthday party. Jun Wuxia had only been there because Feng Wu was her enemy. Since Feng Wu was protected by the crown prince, Jun Wuxia had to condescend to hang out with Zhuo Qinghuan. If Zhuo Qinghuan won back the crown prince's heart, Jun Wuxia felt that she could then take care of Feng Wu. But things didn't turn out that way. Don't even mention that birthday party, Jun Wuxia snapped. I thought my brother was going to be there, but he wasn't. Zhuo Qinghuan's face immediately darkened. She had never been humiliated like this before. Jun Wuxia was a spoiled child and had always gotten her way, so she just blurted out whatever was on her mind. She saw Zhuo Qingwan's dark face and smirked. I thought you would win my brother back from Feng Wu, but look what happened. Emperor Wu arrived at that moment to see his mother. Hearing the conversation, he told the eunuch not to announce his arrival. He hid behind a curtain and listened. Jun Wuxia glared at Zhuo Qingwan. As it turned out, my brother went to the Feng clan. How do you know that? The Empress Dowager stared at Jun Wuxia. Jun Wuxia said, Duge Menghai was given the order to arrest Feng Wu, but his cultivation ability was destroyed as a result. My mom is from the Duge family, which is why I know. The Empress Dowager frowned at Empress Dugu. Is that true? Empress Duge nodded with a pale face. What happened to Duge Menghai was a hard blow to the Duge family, and Zhuo Qingwan was the main reason behind it. After what happened to Duge Menghai, Zhuo Qingwan became their only hope. The Empress Dowager was infuriated. Junjun and Feng Wu, Jun Wuxia said. And that's not all. My brother gave out gift envelopes to everyone in the imperial capital. He spent a fortune for Feng Wu's birthday. What? The Empress Dowager smacked the table. Zhuo Qingwan turned pale. The crown prince was supposed to be angry at Feng Wu, which would make Zhuo Qingwan happy. However, the more Jun Linyuan cared about Feng Wu, the more humiliated Zhuo Qingwan felt. She clenched her fists in her sleeves. She wanted to scream. She was supposed to be respected by everyone, and not treated like this. Zhuo Qingwan rose to her feet. Empress Duge suddenly said, Qingwan is very blessed. Where did that come from? Everyone looked at her. Empress Duge chuckled. Master Linghu himself said that Qingwan is very fortunate and blessed. Master Linghu said so. The Empress Dowager immediately remembered something. She had wanted to be the first precant of the year, but Master Linghu had said that he was going to give that opportunity to a very blessed child. The Empress Dowager had been wondering who that child was. Did Master Linghu call you a blessed child? The Empress Dowager stared at Zhuo Qingwan. Chapter 2495, Why Did I Hear? Chapter 2495, Why Did I Hear? Empress Dugu kept giving Zhuo Qingwan warning looks, trying to remind her that she should grab this great opportunity. Did Master Linghu call you a blessed child? The Empress Dowager asked Zhuo Qingwan. Given how smart Zhuo Qingwan was, she obviously knew that the Empress Dowager didn't like Feng Wu. Now was the best time to win the old lady's heart. As for being a blessed child, she was the sacred lady of Firmament Palace, and the daughter of the Zhuo family, who was born with the true phoenix blood. Of course she was blessed. Therefore she nodded. She nodded. The Empress Dowager was shocked. You were the first precant of the year. Master Linghu chose you. She stared at Zhuo Qingwan. Zhuo Qingwan was baffled. What first precant? Before she could ask, Empress Dugu answered the question for her. That's right. Master Linghu called Qingwan a blessed child. She was also the first precant of the year. Your Majesty, what do you think of her? The Empress Dowager was speechless. It was Zhuo Qingwan. She hadn't expected that. She didn't answer the question. However, Emperor Wu, who had been standing behind the door curtain, was astonished. How could Zhuo Qingwan be so vain? The little monk of Wandering Temple had gone to Fallen Star Yard, and Feng Wu had been the one whom Master Linghu had chosen. How did Zhuo Qingwan have anything to do with that? He cleared his throat. My son is here. The Empress Dowager was glad to see Emperor Wu. Emperor Wu greeted the Empress Dowager and smiled. I heard your cheerful conversation from miles away. What's the occasion? The Empress Dowager said happily. I found the lucky child, who was chosen to be the first precant of the year. Emperor Wu asked, who is it? Empress Duge gestured at Zhuo Qingwan. Your Majesty, it was Qingwan. Look, isn't she pretty? She'll make the perfect wife for His Royal Highness. Master Linghu has acknowledged her great quality. Emperor Wu thought that Feng Wu was better looking. As for becoming Jun Linyuan's wife, that wasn't going to happen. She was vain enough to claim an honor that wasn't hers. So what kind of quality could she have? Of course, Emperor Wu wouldn't be so straightforward. He only glanced at Zhuo Qingwan and said, So you were Wandering Temple's first precant of this year. Zhuo Qingwan didn't know what to say. She knew what becoming the first precant meant, but The chance of pleasing the Empress Dowager was too tempting. So she had let Empress Dugu mislead the Empress Dowager. Now that Emperor Wu had asked the question specifically, Zhuo Qinghuan took a deep breath and nodded. Yes, it was me. No, it wasn't. Emperor Wu wanted to shout at Zhuo Qinghuan. If Master Ling Hu knew what she was doing, he would probably slap her. The girl had spread the rumor first, making everyone believe that Jun Linyuan was in love with her. Now she was laying claim to something that she didn't do. That was despicable. Emperor Wu didn't lose his temper. Instead he asked, "Why did I hear that the first precant of Wandering Temple was Feng Wu?" Chapter 2496, The Best Way. Chapter 2496, The Best Way. What? Everyone was astonished when they heard Emperor Wu's words. Feng Wu? How did Feng Wu have anything to do with it? The Empress Dowager stared at Emperor Wu. You shouldn't joke about such things. Feng Wu would never deserve such an honor. Emperor Wu was displeased. That girl had saved the Empress Dowager many times. Without her, the old lady wouldn't be chatting here now. However, being a loving son, Emperor Wu couldn't say that to his mother's face. Otherwise, she would cry her eyes out. Empress Dugu and Zhuo Qinghuan gave each other astonished looks. Feng Wu? How could it be her? Was it possible that His Royal Highness had helped Feng Wu to grab that chance? In that case, Zhuo Qinghuan would be so humiliated. Just then, concubine Oriole walked toward Emperor Wu with her hands on her bulging belly. Your Majesty, that's not possible. Feng Wu can't be. She suddenly slipped and lost her balance. Ah! She fell to the floor. She was 8 months pregnant, and her belly was as round as a ball. It just so happened that she fell face first. Ah! Concubine Oriole screamed in pain. Oriole, Emperor Wu ran to her side. How do you feel? Are you all right? Get the physician. Concubine Oriole had the voice of a singing oriole, and Emperor Wu quite liked her. It had been a while since one of his women had a baby, and he was rather looking forward to this one. But that fall, Emperor Wu felt his blood run cold. He looked at Zhuo Qinghuan. She was too far away to touch concubine Oriole, and it wouldn't be reasonable to suspect her. But Emperor Wu still glanced at Gao. Gao nodded, indicating that he would look into it. Master Bai soon arrived. He said that concubine Oriole shouldn't be moved around, and it was better to treat her right on the spot. For the baby's safety, the Empress Dowager gave permission to have concubine Oriole treated in Xinang Palace. Master Bai, how's the baby? Emperor Wu asked. Master Bai shook his head. The pregnancy is quite advanced, and things can be tricky. Your Majesty, we need to prepare for the worst. Master Chu also arrived. After examining the patient, he reported to Emperor Wu. Emperor Wu trusted him. He asked, how is she? Is the baby safe? Master Chu took a deep breath. Your Majesty, in the worst-case scenario, who will be the priority? The mother or the baby? Emperor Wu asked. Is it that serious? Master Chu nodded. Which will it be then? Before Emperor Wu could reply, the Empress Dowager said coldly, Concubine Oriole was so careless, and put the baby's life in danger. If something happens to the little prince, she'll pay with her own life. You shouldn't be asking that question. But Emperor Wu still had feelings for his concubine. Zhuo Qinghuan was intrigued. She thought about the question Emperor Wu had asked her, and wondered if he knew something. The best way to stop him from asking the question was. Chapter 2497, Chapter 2497. The best way to do that was to do the emperor a favor. Zhuo Qinghuan knew that if she could save concubine Oriole and the baby, Emperor Wu would be grateful for what she did, and would stop questioning her. She was indeed the culprit who had tripped concubine Oriole. I can help her, Zhuo Qinghuan said calmly. Firmament Palace is known for its medical skills. I'm the Sacred Lady, and I specialize in medicine. She turned to Emperor Wu. If your Majesty wants to keep both the lady and the baby alive, I'm the only one who can help them. Emperor Wu studied her. The truth was that he didn't trust her hence. Gao, go get Miss Feng Wu. That order felt like a slap to Zhuo Qinghuan's face. Why was this even happening? Why would Emperor Wu trust Feng Wu but not her? Your Majesty, Zhuo Qingyuan revered Emperor Wu, but her desire for Jun Linyuan prevailed. She said, I'm a semi-supreme level physician, and will soon be at the supreme level. Why would Feng Wu? Semi? Emperor Wu smirked. Feng Wu passed that level a long time ago. What was that supposed to mean? Zhuo Qingyuan was dumbfounded at first. Then the Empress Dowager said, That's right. Go get Feng Wu. She's the best candidate for the job. What? Zhuo Qingyuan's cheeks flushed with fury. She remembered the information Tong Ke had given her. It mentioned that Feng Wu had treated the Empress Dowager a few times with the assistance of Master Chu. And now, Master Chu was here. Zhuo Qingyuan stared at Emperor Wu, and her eyes glinted. She had been humiliated, and she would have her revenge. She quickly hatched a plan. Empress Dugu was also embarrassed. She led Zhuo Qingyuan to the side and whispered, Feng Wu is indeed a capable physician. Don't take the risk. Zhuo Qingyuan smirked. So what if Feng Wu was already a supreme-level physician? Other than medical skills, Firmament Palace was also great at something else, assassination. Their undead insects could kill a person without leaving a trace. Sure, Zhuo Qingyuan replied. She was so good at controlling her emotions that even Empress Dugu couldn't see how furious she actually was. Master Chu and Master Bai were doing their best to help concubine Oriole. Zhuo Qingyuan lowered her gaze. She had done more than just trip concubine Oriole. Without her intervention, both mother and baby would die today. In the end, the emperor would still have to ask for her help. That thought greatly satisfied Zhuo Qingyuan. Inside, the midwife was doing all she could to get the baby out. But concubine Oriole couldn't go into labor, and the pain was excruciating. She screamed at the top of her lungs. Gradually, her voice became weaker. Master Chu came out with his face covered in sweat. Your Majesty, the lady is in critical condition, and I really need a hand. Emperor Wu gritted his teeth. Feng Wu isn't here yet. The Empress Dowager said. It's been almost 5 minutes. Where is she? Chapter 2498. Princess Feng Wu is here. Chapter 2498. Princess Feng Wu is here. 5 minutes. Granny Lan was speechless. Gao probably hadn't arrived at the Feng clan yet. Of course Miss Feng Wu couldn't be here so soon. She didn't have wings. Master Chu turned to Emperor Wu. Your Majesty, if someone doesn't give me a hand now, we'll lose both the mother and the baby. Emperor Wu was shocked. Didn't you say that you can save one of them? Master Chu shook his head. That was before. Things have become much worse now. Zhuo Qingyuan smiled a little. She was waiting for the emperor to beg her for help. She was the only one who could save the lady and her baby. She smirked for a split second, and Emperor Wu just happened to look at her at that moment. Zhuo Qingyuan. When Feng Wu interrogated Zhuo He, the emperor heard Zhuo He admit that Zhuo Qingyuan was the criminal mastermind behind the scheme against Feng Wu. Emperor Wu hadn't believed it at first. Zhuo Qingyuan had only been a little girl back then. How bad could she be? She couldn't be so cruel. But now he believed it. However, he still cared about his concubine and the baby. Even though he was the emperor, he still had to. He didn't like the idea of asking Zhuo Qingyuan for help at all. Zhuo Qingyuan was so sure that Emperor Wu would ask her for help when Princess Feng Wu is here. Gao's voice rang out. The next moment, Feng Wu rushed into the room. Your Majesty. She was about to greet Emperor Wu when he grabbed her wrist and pushed her into the bedchamber. There's no time for that. Help them. Yes. It took Feng Wu less than 3 seconds from walking into the room to disappearing behind the door curtain of the bedchamber. Zhuo Qingyuan couldn't believe it. How had Feng Wu arrived so soon? Emperor Wu was so excited to see Feng Wu. She was right on time. He then glanced at Zhuo Qingyuan. How dare you try to blackmail me? He had never been a magnanimous man, and now, he held a grudge against Zhuo Qingyuan. But Zhuo Qingyuan didn't notice the look in his eyes. She only cared about the woman in labor. She had put an undead insect in concubine Oriole. That was why the baby wouldn't come out. She believed that Feng Wu would never find out. At that thought, Zhuo Qingwan smirked again. It was good news for her that Feng Wu had arrived so soon. This way, she could prove to the world that despite being a supreme-level physician, Feng Wu couldn't save concubine Oriole and her baby. Seeing that things were getting messy, Mrs. Zhuo gave Zhuo Qingwan a warning glance, telling her to leave. But Zhuo Qingwan shook her head. Mrs. Zhuo was so anxious. They had only been here for minutes, and so many things had happened. She began to panic. But Zhuo Qingwan was very confident. Chapter 2499. I won't let her. Chapter 2499. I won't let her. Feng Wu was bound to fail, so Zhuo Qingwan wasn't worried. As expected, concubine Oriole's voice grew weaker and weaker until she sounded like a cat meowing. Master Chu was assisting Feng Wu. At first, Feng Wu didn't find out what was wrong. She examined everything and checked the concubine's pulse a few times, but still found nothing. Master Chu was worried. Miss Wu, do you know what's going on? Feng Wu rolled her eyes at him. Master Chu smiled bitterly. His Majesty cares about the lady and her baby very much. If something goes wrong, we're going to. Just then, concubine Oriole grabbed Master Chu's hand. Master Chu, help me. Master Chu drew back his hand and told concubine Oriole. Miss Feng Wu is a much better physician. I'm only assisting her. You should be asking for her help. No. Concubine Oriole shook her head. She's a bad person. She'll kill me. Master Chu, please help me. Master Chu was shocked. Why would she say such things in a moment like this? He immediately said to Feng Wu. Miss Wu, concubine Oriole is only. Feng Wu said grumpily. Let's just save her life first. Concubine Oriole screamed. I don't need your help. You're evil. Feng Wu rolled her eyes at the woman. She couldn't take it anymore. She wasn't obligated to save this woman. She turned to leave. When she walked out of the room, Emperor Wu immediately took her hands. Kiddo, is Oriole all right? Zhuo Qingwan smirked. All right. She knew better than anyone else how concubine Oriole was doing. The undead insect was still in her womb and stopping the baby from coming out. Of course, she wouldn't tell anyone what was going on. Ever since Zhuo Qingwan came back, she had been living in Feng Wu's shadow. Now that she heard concubine Oriole's desperate cries, she felt so satisfied. She had always known that she liked to see other people suffer. Whenever someone else was in pain, she would find it cathartic. Feng Wu glanced at Emperor Wu and gestured at the bedchamber. I won't let her treat me. She's evil. She's going to kill me. You Majesty, please let Miss Zhuo help me. Concubine Oriole shouted at the top of her lungs. Emperor Wu was furious. But Zhuo Qingwan looked pleased. After hearing that, Emperor Wu had to let her treat the lady. The Empress Dowager's face darkened. Concubine Oriole's shouting was giving her a headache. Your Majesty, if Oriole is insisting that Zhuo Qingwan treat her, I'm sure that something went wrong when Feng Wu was there. How about we let Zhuo Qingwan treat her first? If the baby still won't come out, we can then send Feng Wu in. The Empress Dowager had never considered the possibility that Feng Wu wouldn't treat Oriole. Chapter 2500. She left. Chapter 2500. She left. In the Empress Dowager's eyes, Feng Wu should feel honored to be given the chance to treat a member of the royal family. Emperor Wu said apologetically, Xiao Wu, sorry about this. Concubine Oriole doesn't know what she's talking about. After the baby is born, I'll make her apologize to you. Feng Wu waved him off. There's no need. If I'm not needed here, I'll go back home. She promptly left after that. Everyone was astonished. She left. Just like that. How could she? How could she act so arrogantly in front of the royal family? The Empress Dowager was furious. Let her go. We'll be just fine without her. Concubine Oriole will be fine. The Empress Dowager smirked. How can a girl of her age have such a temper? Jun Wuxia said, my brother likes her just fine. The Empress Dowager wanted to smack Jun Wuxia on the head. Let Zhuo Qingwan treat Oriole, said the Empress Dowager. She then turned to Emperor Wu. You may not trust the skills of Firmament Palace, but I do. Zhuo Qingwan is a much better physician than Feng Wu. Go inside. If the prince is born safely, I'll give you a big reward, the Empress Dowager told Zhuo Qinghuan. Zhuo Qinghuan bowed politely before going into the room. The Empress Dowager was pleased. That's a perfect bow. She must have worked very hard on it. Granny Gui immediately said, That's so true. Her knees were bent at the perfect angle. It was so beautiful. Apart from Granny Gui, the Empress Dowager also had Granny Lan as her maid. Compared with Granny Gui, Granny Lan was a much more decent person. She thought, does she know how urgent the situation is? Nobody cares about a perfect bow. Of course, she wouldn't dare say that out loud. The Empress Dowager glared at Emperor Wu. You've indulged that Feng Wu too much. How could she walk out on us like that? She needs to be tamed. Emperor Wu took a deep breath as he listened to his mother's ranting. Concubine Oriole was very frustrating, but Xiao Wu had left so quickly too. I'll talk to her later. She's as stubborn as Jun Lin Yuan. I'll make sure that she's disciplined. Disciplined? The Empress Dowager couldn't believe her ears. If anything happens to Concubine Oriole and the baby, I'll kill her. Emperor Wu said, I'm sure that isn't her fault. The Empress Dowager wanted to kick Emperor Wu. What happened to her docile son? The Empress Dowager smirked. If Zhuo Qinghuan wasn't here, Concubine Oriole and the baby would have been left to die. I'll never forget what Feng Wu did. Chapter 2501. Zhuo Qinghuan realizes something is wrong. Chapter 2501. Zhuo Qinghuan realizes something is wrong. Emperor Wu didn't know what to say. In the delivery room, Zhuo Qinghuan knew where to find the undead insect, which she had put inside the mother. To avoid any suspicion, she couldn't find the source of the problem too fast. Concubine Oriole looked expectantly at Zhuo Qinghuan. Miss Qinghuan, please help me. You're my only hope now. I don't trust Feng Wu, Concubine Oriole whimpered. She wanted to cry and shout, but she was too exhausted to raise her voice. Zhuo Qinghuan smirked. Help her. That had never been part of her plan. If Concubine Oriole was kept alive, other people might find evidence on her that could lead back to Zhuo Qinghuan. Therefore, the lady had to die. But Concubine Oriole didn't know that. She looked at Zhuo Qinghuan and relaxed a little. Then, Zhuo Qinghuan realized that something was wrong. Her undead insect was supposed to be at the entrance of the mother's womb. Zhuo Qinghuan could use the insect in her own body to control the one inside Concubine Oriole and guide it out of her womb. That way, she wouldn't leave any evidence behind. It was a perfect plan, but she couldn't sense the other undead insect anymore. It was dead. Zhuo Qinghuan was shocked. How could that happen? That undead insect was a top-level one. She had been feeding it her blood every day. It shouldn't have died so easily. Come out. Zhuo Qinghuan tried to lure out the undead insect. But no matter how hard she tried, nothing happened. Soon, it hurts. Concubine Oriole's voice grew weaker and weaker. Zhuo Qinghuan turned to Master Chu. A natural birth is out of the question. Our only option is to cut Concubine Oriole's belly open and take out the baby. Master Chu said. But that will kill the mother. Looking at Concubine Oriole, who was slipping into unconsciousness, Zhuo Qinghuan said coldly. It's either her or the baby. Which one is it going to be? Master Chu said. It's not our call. Concubine Oriole should be the one making that choice. She alone has the right to decide who lives. He remained level-headed. Zhuo Qinghuan smirked. The Empress Dowager gave me the order before I came in. If only one of them can live, choose the baby. I'm simply following her order. She then took out a dagger and aimed it at Concubine Oriole's belly. She needed to move fast. That was because the undead insect turned into blood after it died, and the baby was absorbing it now. If she waited any longer, the baby would die. Your blade isn't disinfected. Master Chu stared at her. Miss Feng Wu says that all blades need to be disinfected. A dirty blade will get the patient killed. Zhuo Qinghuan glared at him. She's going to die anyway. Master Chu, move aside. Chapter 2502, Zhuo Qinghuan's Failure 1. Chapter 2502, Zhuo Qinghuan's Failure 1. Master Chu insisted. Disinfect the blade first. Zhuo Qingwan wanted to kill the stubborn old man. This was the first time she was showing off her skills in front of the Empress Dowager. She didn't care about concubine Oriole, but she would be so humiliated if she couldn't save the baby. Left with no other choice, Zhuo Qingwan had to heat the blade first before she cut open concubine Oriole's belly. The baby was indeed a boy, but his skin was a light purple, and he wasn't making a sound. Master Chu was busy treating concubine Oriole, when Zhuo Qingwan said coldly, "Don't bother. The little prince is our priority." Concubine Oriole wasn't completely unconscious. She heard what Zhuo Qingwan said. She looked up at Zhuo Qingwan and couldn't believe how cold-blooded she was. But she couldn't even lift a finger. Zhuo Qingwan was treating the baby. Her face had darkened a little. The baby had absorbed some of the blood of the undead insect. And he was poisoned. The undead insect was from Firmament Palace and could be traced back to her. Zhuo Qingwan studied the baby. She wondered if she should save him. If he was alive, he would become evidence of her crime. But if she didn't save him, the others would think that she wasn't good enough. Would the Empress Dowager ever trust her again? She decided to keep him alive and neutralize the poison later. The midwife was so nervous that she almost burst into tears. The baby was silent. She was worried that if the baby died, she would be punished as well. Zhuo Qingwan smacked the baby on his butt. The baby cried. The midwife let out a breath of relief. Zhuo Qingwan then headed out. Master Chu said, "What about concubine Oriole? Aren't you going to do something?" Zhuo Qingwan didn't even look back. She's bound to die. There's no need to do anything. Master Chu couldn't believe his ears. Concubine Oriole didn't want to die. She finally had a son, and her new life had just begun. "I don't want to die." Zhuo Qingwan left the room with the baby. The Empress Dowager was pleased to see that it was a boy. But that didn't mean that she was fond of the baby. Jun Linyuan was the only grandson she loved. As for the other princes and princesses, they were as good as strangers to her. "How about concubine Oriole?" Emperor Wu asked. Zhuo Qingwan shook her head. Concubine Oriole volunteered to have her belly cut open to save the baby. "Your Majesty, if you go inside now, you can still say goodbye to her." How cold-blooded. Emperor Wu glared at Zhuo Qingwan. How could she say such a thing in such a calm voice? The Empress Dowager frowned. "You mean you can't save concubine Oriole?" Zhuo Qingwan said, "I'm sorry, Your Majesties." Concubine Oriole had an influential family as well. Her brother worked in Northern Feng General's army. Since concubine Oriole was on Empress Duga's side, so was her brother. Chapter 2503, Zhuo Qingwan's Failure 2. Chapter 2503, Zhuo Qingwan's Failure 2. Northern Feng General had never seen eye to eye with Empress Dugu, and having Zhang Ying, concubine Oriole's brother, in his army was quite the pain in the neck. Because of that, Feng Sun didn't like concubine Oriole at all. Of course Feng Wu didn't know that. Master Chu suddenly rushed out of the bedchamber and said to Emperor Wu, "Your Majesty, there's still hope. We just need to get Miss Feng Wu back." Emperor Wu asked, "Are you sure?" Master Chu said, "Yes. Her Majesty was in critical condition several times, and Miss Feng Wu managed to turn things around every single time. I'm sure that she'll be able to do something." The Empress Dowager was about to object, but what Master Chu said rendered her speechless. Emperor Wu looked at the crying baby. The baby had just been born, and he still had a whole life in front of him. If concubine Oriole died, Emperor Wu would feel guilty for the rest of his life over the death of the baby's mother. That was what Jun Linyuan had gone through. Emperor Wu wondered if that was why his son had turned out the way he was. At that thought he glanced at Gao, who took the hint and left the room. Concubine Oriole was slipping in and out of consciousness. She had lost all hope. "I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I don't want to die. Brother, help me." But Zhuo Qingwan had been so certain that she would die. Concubine Oriole regretted her decision. Feng Wu had said that she could keep both her and her son alive, but she chose Zhuo Qingwan instead. In the end, concubine Oriole was abandoned. She wondered if things would have been different if she had chosen Feng Wu. Gao soon came back. He was on his own. Zhuo Qingwan smiled. She didn't believe that Feng Wu would return. Why should she come back if she couldn't save anyone? The Empress Dowager snorted. I've never met such an arrogant girl before. Never. She decided that Feng Wu wasn't good enough to be her maid, let alone her grandson's wife. Gao had a small bottle in his hands, and he hurried toward the delivery room. Isn't the girl coming? Emperor Wu frowned. He understood that she was upset. She had just been told off, but he didn't like it when she put on airs. Gao nodded. Your Majesty, I found Miss Feng Wu in the kitchen, and she was pouring this medicine into the bottle when I found her. She said that if concubine Oriole drinks this, she might still have a chance. Emperor Wu said, hurry up then. Concubine Oriole didn't like the idea. Feng Wu doesn't like me. She wants me dead. Emperor Wu scolded her. If she meant you harm, she didn't need to come here at all. She could have just let you die on your own. Do you know how hard it is to get her help? Concubine Oriole was already very weak, and she gave in when Emperor Wu scolded her. She took the bottle and drank the medicine. Gao said, Miss Feng Wu said that she wouldn't come here. As for Concubine Oriole's belly, Master Chu can sew it up with the method she taught him. Chapter 2504, Zhuo Qingwan's Failure 3. Chapter 2504, Zhuo Qingwan's Failure 3. Master Chu asked excitedly, what are the chances of saving her? Concubine Oriole stared at Gao. Gao imitated Feng Wu and said indifferently, if Concubine Oriole cooperates, there's an 80% chance that she'll live. 80%. Concubine Oriole was thrilled. But she wasn't convinced because Zhuo Qingwan had said that she was going to die. Emperor Wu had always trusted Feng Wu, so he urged Concubine Oriole, just drink it. Gao then helped Concubine Oriole take the medicine while Master Chu sutured her stomach. The door to the delivery room was open. Everyone outside heard the conversation. All eyes were on Zhuo Qingwan, since she had been so certain that there was no point trying to save Concubine Oriole. She had given up on Concubine Oriole. The Empress Dowager looked at Zhuo Qingwan suspiciously. Is Feng Wu really a better physician than you are? At her age, she needed a physician that could treat her effectively around the clock. Because of that, the Empress Dowager felt that she tolerated Feng Wu enough. If she could find someone better, however, of course, she would choose that person over Feng Wu. Zhuo Qingwan smiled and said, Concubine Oriole is beyond saving. Empress Duga chimed in. Your Majesty, Concubine Oriole is like a sister to me, and Qingwan is my niece. If there was a way to save Concubine Oriole, I'm sure Qingwan would have done everything she could. However, Concubine Oriole's condition is simply too dire. Even Firmament Palace can't save her. Childbirth is so challenging for women. The Empress Dowager looked less displeased, but she still said, but Feng Wu said she could treat Oriole. Empress Duga said, if she could, she wouldn't have left so quickly. Your Majesty, talk is cheap. The Empress Dowager agreed with her. Empress Duga went on. If Feng Wu really is that good, she would have cured Bao Er already. Because Jun Linyuan cared about Bao Er, the Empress Dowager liked the girl as well. She nodded when Empress Duga mentioned her. Speaking of Bao Er, Empress Duga glanced at Zhuo Qingwan. Zhuo Qingwan nodded. She had felt humiliated when she tried to enrage Jun Linyuan with the news that Feng Wu had stolen the immortal spiritual fruit, and she wanted to get back at Feng Wu. Although Feng Sun and the Crown Prince had forgiven Feng Wu, what about the Empress Dowager? What would she think? Therefore, Zhuo Qingwan had shared that information with Mrs. Zhuo before she came to the palace. Wah! Mrs. Zhuo was so excited that she immediately told Empress Dugu. Empress Dugu was equally excited, and they began to talk about Bao Er. After getting Zhuo Qingwan's permission, Empress Dugu was about to tell the Empress Dowager what Feng Wu had done. But before she could say anything, she heard Emperor Wu's excited voice. Oriole, you're awake. How do you feel? Master Chu, come here. She looks much better now. Emperor Wu seldom sounded so excited. Empress Duga's stomach lurched. Chapter 2505, Zhuo Qingwan's Failure 4. Chapter 2505 Zhuo Qinghuan's Failure 4. Empress Dugu involuntarily looked at Zhuo Qinghuan. Zhuo Qinghuan shook her head to tell the Empress to stay calm. Empress Dugu trusted Zhuo Qinghuan, so she stopped fidgeting. But soon, they heard Master Chu's voice. Concubine Oriel's pulse is getting stronger, and the toxin is leaving her system. Your Majesty, Concubine Oriel is getting better. That's great. Emperor Wu was excited. Feng Wu is as impressive as she's said to be. I did the right thing to trust her. This is great news. Concubine Oriel was equally excited. She sat up and wept. Your Majesty, am I going to live? Emperor Wu held her shoulders and nodded. I told you that Xiao Wu would save you. She didn't even need to come here. Her medicine alone has cured you. Thinking back to what had happened, Concubine Oriel burst into tears. Your Majesty, I really thought I was going to die. Zhuo Qinghuan said so herself, and she told Master Chu not to help me. Her accusation was very effective. She wrapped her arms around Emperor Wu's waist and cried at the top of her lungs. Outside, Zhuo Qinghuan didn't know what to say. Her face was scarlet red with rage. She had to clench her fists to stop herself from losing control. That woman! How dare she accuse me like that? While she was thinking that, the Empress Dowager was already walking toward the delivery room. She stopped at the door and asked, Is Concubine Oriel all right now? Emperor Wu said, Yes, her condition has stabilized and her pulse is strong. If everything goes as planned, she'll live. The Empress Dowager nodded. If she were given the choice, she didn't want Concubine Oriel to die. After all, this was the Empress Dowager's palace, and she didn't want to have a dead person here. However, she turned around and glared at Zhuo Qinghuan. Did you tell Concubine Oriel that she was beyond saving? Zhuo Qinghuan was furious. She had never been questioned like this before. The Empress Dowager stared at her. Answer. Me. How dare this old hag talk to me like this? Zhuo Qinghuan was furious. She looked at her hands. One strike, and she could ruin the Empress Dowager's face. This old woman has no right to scold me. The Empress Dowager said, For a moment, I really thought that you were a better physician than Feng Wu. But you were just bragging. Gosh. That was harsh. It was worse than slapping Zhuo Qinghuan. How humiliating. Zhuo Qinghuan was so embarrassed. Empress Dugu glanced at Zhuo Qinghuan. She knew that the proud girl wouldn't take the criticism well. Zhuo Qinghuan wanted to scream. She recalled how Feng Wu had reacted a moment ago. When the Empress Dowager scolded Feng Wu, she promptly left without any hesitation. The Empress Dowager had been furious. However, Emperor Wu still liked Feng Wu, and there was nothing the Empress Dowager could do. Zhuo Qinghuan realized that she envied Feng Wu. Chapter 2506, Zhuo Qinghuan Panics. Chapter 2506 Zhuo Qinghuan Panics. The Empress Dowager ignored Zhuo Qinghuan's embarrassment and kept staring at her. Zhuo Qinghuan was so furious that she wanted to scratch the old lady's eyes out. But she calmed down in the end and told herself, Zhuo Qinghuan, you have the true phoenix blood, and you're going to marry Jun Linyuan. You'll be the winner in the end. The thought finally made Zhuo Qinghuan control her temper. She said indifferently, Concubine Oriel's condition is quite complicated, and she can't be cured so easily. Plenty of medicine can create the illusion of the patient becoming better before their condition worsens again. An illusion? The Empress Dowager had almost given up on Zhuo Qinghuan, but she was shocked when she heard Zhuo Qinghuan's diagnosis. Zhuo Qinghuan said, That's right. The patient will look fine for a short period of time, but they'll quickly weaken and die. That was the only possibility Zhuo Qinghuan could think of. Because that was what she would make happen. Hence she reached that conclusion. The Empress Dowager asked suspiciously, Are you sure? Zhuo Qinghuan said, It's very possible. Ines, the Empress Dowager asked, How are you going to prove it? Zhuo Qinghuan smiled. That's easy. Let me check Concubine Oriel's pulse. She was so certain that even Emperor Wu believed her. Concubine Oriel had been very cheerful, but her stomach lurched when she heard that. She gave Emperor Wu a pleading look. The Empress Dowager said, Check Concubine Oriel's pulse then. At the end of the day, the Empress Dowager still cared about herself more. If Zhuo Qingwan really was a better physician, the Empress Dowager wouldn't need to tolerate Fengwu anymore. The servants carried concubine Oriole out of the delivery room. Xinang Palace was the Empress Dowager's residence, and concubine Oriole couldn't stay here forever. Concubine Oriole gave Zhuo Qingwan her hand, but she was on guard. She had grown to trust Fengwu more than Zhuo Qingwan. When Zhuo Qingwan checked concubine Oriole's pulse, she was so astonished that her fingers trembled a little. What the heck? Although concubine Oriole's pulse was weaker than a healthy person's, it was within the normal range. The undead insect was supposed to turn into a potent toxin when it was destroyed, but concubine Oriole showed no sign of having been poisoned. How could this be? Had someone neutralized the poison already? Was it Fengwu? What did you give her? Show me the bottle, Zhuo Qingwan said to Master Chu. Master Chu asked, Miss Zhuo, how is concubine Oriole doing? Zhuo Qingwan wanted to say that concubine Oriole was going to die, but that would make her a liar. She wanted to poison concubine Oriole again, but to her frustration, when she tried to put another undead insect inside concubine Oriole, the insect wouldn't go in. Fearing that the insect would be spotted, Zhuo Qingwan had to retrieve it. Not only wouldn't the undead insect go inside concubine Oriole, it also seemed frightened. What was it afraid of? The first one had gone in just fine. Zhuo Qingwan panicked a little. The undead insect was her secret weapon, and she had defeated many enemies with it. But now, Chapter 2507, Humiliated Again. Chapter 2507 Humiliated Again. Naturally, Master Chu was on Fengwu's side. He asked Zhuo Qingwan, Miss Zhuo, what do you think of concubine Oriole's condition? Before Zhuo Qingwan could answer, Master Chu said, Master Bai and I have examined concubine Oriole already. She's doing fine. What do you think? Zhuo Qingwan didn't know what to say. Her face was livid. She was furious that concubine Oriole was doing very well. Moreover, when she tried to poison concubine Oriole again, the undead insect kept running away. Master Chu wouldn't let Zhuo Qingwan off the hook. Emperor Wu realized it as well and joined in. Do you think there's something wrong with concubine Oriole? Zhuo Qingwan shook her head. Emperor Wu asked, Do you think there's something wrong with Fengwu's treatment then? Zhuo Qingwan was filled with rage, but she had no choice but to shake her head again. Emperor Wu said, In that case, let go. You're keeping concubine Oriole from getting her rest. With a wave of his hand, the servants carried concubine Oriole back to her own palace. What Zhuo Qingwan failed to notice was concubine Oriole glaring at her, as if they were enemies. Zhuo Qingwan had tried to kill her. Concubine Oriole had noticed it. When Zhuo Qingwan checked her pulse, she had tried to plant an insect in her. It was tinier than a sesame seed, and Zhuo Qingwan had hidden it in her nail. No one else had noticed. But concubine Oriole had almost died tonight, so she was more careful than everyone else. Zhuo Qingwan had given up on her, but she was saved by Fengwu's potion. After that, concubine Oriole began to suspect Zhuo Qingwan. She tried to recall the moment she fell, and she seemed to remember a force coming from Zhuo Qingwan's direction. Now Zhuo Qingwan had tried to put an insect in her. Concubine Oriole hated Zhuo Qingwan to the bone, but Zhuo Qingwan still knew nothing of it. Or maybe she did know, but she simply didn't care. To her, concubine Oriole wasn't worth her concern. Concubine Oriole sat up in bed and told a maid, Fetch me some paper. She was going to write to her brother to tell him that if something happened to her son, Zhuo Qingwan was the culprit. Zhuo Qingwan was helping Empress Dugu and tried to kill me. Empress Dugu, I've done everything for you. When His Majesty came to visit me, I persuaded him to go to your palace instead. However, you want to kill me. Concubine Oriole now hated both Zhuo Qingwan and Empress Dugu. Those two women would never have thought that the incident today would bring them so much trouble in the future. Zhuo Qingwan was cornered by Emperor Wu. Emperor Wu said, It was a life and death situation. If you can't do it, just say so. There's always someone better out there. He walked away after that, displeased by Zhuo Qinghuan's dark face. Empress Dugu panicked. She knew that if she let Emperor Wu leave like that, he would never like Zhuo Qinghuan again. She had to think of something to distract him. Chapter 2508, The First Worshipper. Chapter 2508, The First Worshipper. Empress Dugu said, "Your Majesty." Emperor Wu was going to leave, but he stopped when he heard his wife's call. "Your Majesty, it's not like that. We don't know what concubine Oriol's condition will be like after this, or if Feng Wu's treatment will definitely work." "Are you hoping that concubine Oriol won't be cured?" Emperor Wu frowned. "Of course not." Empress Dugu shook her head and said loudly, "Your Majesty, I'm only saying that Qinghuan may be as good a physician as Feng Wu." Emperor Wu smiled a little. "I can make my own decision." He thought, "I have eyes. I don't need you to tell me who's a better physician." He turned away from her. Empress Dugu panicked. She knew that the emperor was convinced that Feng Wu was better. "Your Majesty, Qinghuan was the first worshipper of the year, and Master Linghu called her a blessed child. Don't you trust Master Linghu?" Empress Dugu asked. Hearing that, the Empress Dowager's eyes lit up. Empress Dugu had mentioned it before. Now that she brought it up again, the Empress Dowager was reminded of this piece of important information. "That's right. Master Linghu said so." Empress Dugu said, "Your Majesty, Master Linghu made her the first worshipper of the year. She would be the ideal wife for any family." The Empress Dowager nodded to herself. She liked the idea of the blessed child. It would certainly benefit her grandson. Empress Dugu was thrilled when she saw the Empress Dowager nod. It seemed that being the first worshipper was enough to cancel out the negative effect of not curing concubine Oriol. Nice. But when she turned to Emperor Wu, she saw something unexpected. He was sneering as if he knew something. Empress Dugu's stomach lurched. Emperor Wu turned to Zhuo Qinghuan. "Why did I hear that Feng Wu was the first worshipper?" Zhuo Qinghuan went pale. Why was everyone talking about Feng Wu? Why was couldn't she just disappear? She took a deep breath and was about to answer, when Emperor Wu said, "I went to Wandering Temple today to pray for the baby." "Miss Zhuo, were you really the first worshipper at Wandering Temple this year?" Zhuo Qinghuan didn't know what to say. Empress Dugu panicked. Zhuo Qinghuan flushed and said indifferently, "My master is Master Linghu's friend, and I had the honor to meet Master Linghu the other day. I think Master Linghu was only wishing me good luck when he called me a blessed child." She tried to talk her way out of the awkward situation, but the Empress Dowager wouldn't let her, because she felt that her chance had been taken away. "Were you not the first worshipper?" Zhuo Qinghuan shook her head. "My family was the first to worship at Guangyuan Temple. Guangyuan Temple was much bigger in size, but Wandering Temple was more famous because of Master Linghu. Hence, Guangyuan Temple was only the second largest temple in the empire." The Empress Dowager glared at Zhuo Qinghuan. Chapter 2509, Immortal Spiritual Fruit. Chapter 2509, Immortal Spiritual Fruit. The Empress Dowager wanted to call Zhuo Qinghuan a liar, but the girl had indeed been the first worshipper, only that it was at Guangyuan Temple. And she had indeed met Master Linghu before, and the master had blessed her out of kindness. Seeing that the crisis was almost over, Empress Dugu changed the subject. She knew that the Empress Dowager was angry, and the old lady never forgave those who wronged her. She wouldn't remember whoever had been kind to her, but if someone offended her in the slightest way, she would hold a grudge against them forever. To distract her, there was only one way. Empress Dugu knew that she had to make Feng Wu sound 100 times worse than Zhuo Qinghuan. That way, the Empress Dowager would shift her hatred to Feng Wu. Empress Dugu said, "Speaking of Miss Feng Wu, I heard something recently. I don't know if it's my place to say it." Emperor Wu said, "Then don't say it." He knew that Empress Dugu wouldn't say anything nice about Feng Wu. Empress Dugu mumbled, "But it has something to do with concubine Oriol and Princess Bao. I think I should share the information. Cut to the chase." The Empress Dowager was impatient. Empress Dugu said, A year ago, we received information about the immortal spiritual fruit from northern border city, and His Royal Highness went there immediately. She stole a glance at the Empress Dowager. As expected, the Empress Dowager listened carefully when Jun Linyuan was mentioned. Empress Duga knew what the old lady wanted to hear. When His Royal Highness arrived at northern border city, Yu Minji of the Dark Dynasty was there as well. His Royal Highness went through much peril to obtain the fruit. The Empress Dowager frowned. However, someone stole that immortal spiritual fruit from His Royal Highness, said Empress Dugu. What? The Empress Dowager smacked the table. Who was it? Empress Dugu said. The thief was so cunning that even His Royal Highness was caught off guard. To make it worse, His Royal Highness couldn't find that person afterward. The frustration upset him for a whole year. Find that person and kill them, the Empress Dowager growled. Empress Duga said, that person is so crafty. If His Royal Highness is surrounded by such people. The Empress Dowager was furious. How dare they get close to Junjun? Jun Linyuan was the only person the Empress Dowager cared for. The boy had never failed at anything, and she couldn't believe that someone could do such a thing to him. Your Majesty, that person was in northern border city. That person lost the ability to cultivate, but the immortal spiritual fruit enabled them to regain the ability. After that, they made such rapid progress that they're already a level 6 spiritual lord. And that person is so proud just because they have good medical skills. Northern border city, regaining cultivation ability, good medical skills. A name came to the Empress Dowager's mind. Feng Wu. Chapter 25:10. It was her. Chapter 25:10. It was her. When the Empress Dowager said Feng Wu's name, Zhuo Qinghuan closed her eyes and let out a breath of relief. Her plan had worked. With everything that had happened, Zhuo Qinghuan had to admit that Feng Wu was a formidable enemy. Feng Wu didn't even need to come here in person. She only sent Gao back with a bottle of potion. Not only did it neutralize the poison, it also stopped Zhuo Qinghuan's undead insects. I can't let her win so easily. What will other people think of me? Zhuo Qinghuan was determined to destroy Feng Wu. Feng Wu? It really was her? The Empress Dowager went pale. She stole Junjun's immortal spiritual fruit. She's going to pay for it. Granny Lan's heart sank. She was right. The Empress Dowager smacked the table. Go to the Feng clan and bring that girl here. I'm going to kill her. Zhuo Qinghuan and Empress Dugu exchanged pleased looks. Feng Wu was doomed. Emperor Wu didn't know what to do. He had grown to like Feng Wu a lot, and already saw her as his future daughter-in-law. But now, seeing how furious his mother was, Emperor Wu said, Mother, that might not be what happened. Empress Duga said, Your Majesty, it's the truth. Emperor Wu glared at her. Shut up. Empress Duga lowered her head. The Empress Dowager glared at Emperor Wu. Not another word. Emperor Wu didn't know what to say. The Empress Dowager said, What did I tell you? That Feng Wu is trouble. Do you see her face? Her mother is just like that, and so is she. Emperor Wu tried to interrupt. Mother, Lady Ling is. The Empress Dowager wouldn't listen. She's been trying to get close to Junjun ever since he went to northern border city. She's using him. She stole the immortal spiritual fruit that would save Bao Er. Even if you don't care about Bao Er, have you forgotten about your sister? The mention of his sister rendered Emperor Wu speechless. The Empress Dowager ranted. Do you think the immortal spiritual fruit was what Feng Wu really wanted? That was just the beginning. I don't know what she did, but ever since Junjun came back from the north, he hasn't been able to take his eyes off her. Emperor Wu said, Not at first. I have eyes and I saw it. Junjun has been following her wherever she goes. The Empress Dowager shouted. Empress Dugu and Zhuo Qinghuan had been smiling, but hearing that, they suddenly felt depressed. The Empress Dowager looked like she was about to explode. I don't care. Junjun can't have that girl around him. She's going to ruin him. Kill her. Emperor Wu couldn't believe how unreasonable his mother was. The Empress Dowager said, Kill her, or don't ever see me again. Chapter 25:11, Zhuo Qingwan said so. Chapter 25:11 Zhuo Qingwan said so. Emperor Wu didn't know what to say. He began to wonder if he had indulged his mother too much. She had become so arrogant and willful that he couldn't remember what she was like before. He knew that whenever he indulged his women too much, they became unreasonable. Why was his mother giving him the same feeling? Or was he overthinking it? What are you waiting for? Kill her, the Empress Dowager urged. Zhuo Qingwan and Empress Dugu looked at Emperor Wu. Emperor Wu cleared his throat and put his hands behind his back, as if he was waiting for someone. He was. When Empress Dugu mentioned the immortal spiritual fruit, he knew that his mother would be furious. He couldn't do anything about his mother, but someone else could. Gao had already sent a servant to fetch Jun Linyuan. Emperor Wu thought, it's time to test how much Jun Linyuan cares for Feng Wu. It would take Jun Linyuan at least 15 minutes to come to court from his residence after he received the message. Only 8 minutes had passed so far, so the servant should have just arrived at the crown prince's residence. Emperor Wu thought that he needed to stall for a few more minutes. But he was wrong. He heard footsteps outside. All hail His Royal Highness. SSSS. Emperor Wu drew in his breath, because Jun Linyuan had arrived much sooner than he had expected. Everyone turned in that direction. Zhuo Qingwan had a bad feeling when she heard the announcement. She had only revealed the secret to the Empress Dowager, because Jun Linyuan had forgiven Feng Wu. She wanted the Empress Dowager to hate Feng Wu, so that she could put some pressure on Jun Linyuan. Jun Linyuan arrived with his usual demeanor. His intimidating aura filled the room. It was an aura which overpowered Emperor Wu's. And he was unapproachable. Everyone in the room could sense his energy. Feng Sun came in after Jun Linyuan. He gave Zhuo Qingwan a taunting look, and Zhuo Qingwan had to pretend that she didn't see it. She had a feeling that she was going to be humiliated again. She tried to convince herself that it wasn't going to happen. Junjun dash. The Empress Dowager was excited to see Jun Linyuan. She grabbed his hand and said, Junjun, my baby Jun, baby Jun. Feng Sun wanted to laugh, but he forced himself to keep a straight face. Boss Jun would kill him if he laughed. Jun Linyuan frowned and said coldly, Grandmother. He had talked to the Empress Dowager twice about the way she addressed him. His tone reminded the Empress Dowager of their conversation, so she took his hand and said obsequiously, Sure, I won't call you that. But you've been so careless. How could you let someone trick you like that? If Zhuo Qingwan hadn't told me, I would never have known so many things. Zhuo Qingwan glared at the Empress Dowager. How could she say that? To make herself seem a neutral party, Zhuo Qingwan had told the whole thing to Empress Dugu, who had then told the Empress Dowager. Why would the Empress Dowager blame everything on her? You're ruining my reputation, you old hag. Chapter 25:12 He's pleased. Chapter 25:12 He's pleased. Zhuo Qingwan was so furious that she wanted to slap the Empress Dowager. But the Empress Dowager didn't know that. She was holding Jun Linyuan's hand and complaining. Jun Linyuan, that Feng Wu is so evil. She's been using you the whole time. Jun Linyuan wanted to retort, but the agitated Empress Dowager wouldn't let him. Junjun, shall we kill her? Kill her? Jun Linyuan's eyes glinted coldly when he heard those words. The Empress Dowager was chilled to the bone, and her stomach lurched. She felt as if she was being dragged into an abyss. She was horrified. Jun Linyuan calmed down and said, I know what she did. He knew. Everyone stared at Jun Linyuan in disbelief. Why didn't he kill Feng Wu then? Zhuo Qingwan took a deep breath. She already knew that it was impossible to make Jun Linyuan get angry at Feng Wu. She only hoped that he wouldn't blame her for telling the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager stared at Jun Linyuan. You knew? Then why didn't you kill her? She stole Bao Er's immortal spiritual fruit. She couldn't understand why the boy wouldn't kill the person who deserved to die. Jun Linyuan gave her a warning look and said coldly, I'm not killing her. The Empress Dowager was disappointed. The boy had never given her that look before. She said, but she. Jun Linyuan waved her off. She said she would treat Bao Air. The Empress Dowager asked, what if she can't cure Bao Air? All eyes were on Jun Linyuan. They all wondered the same thing. What if Feng Wu couldn't cure Bao Air? Her condition was so severe that even Master Ling Hu couldn't do much about it. Zhuo Qinghuan, who had wanted to leave, also stopped and looked at Jun Linyuan. What if Feng Wu couldn't cure Bao Air? His Royal Highness would have to kill her then, right? However, the Crown Prince's answer surprised everyone. If she can't cure Bao Air, she'll use herself as compensation. Teehee. Feng Sun didn't want to laugh, but he couldn't help it. He had never seen the Crown Prince lie like that. But he was the only one laughing. The other people were all astonished. Feng Wu would be the compensation. How could that happen? That was preposterous. Zhuo Qinghuan looked at Jun Linyuan and saw the pleased look on his face. Why was he so pleased? Zhuo Qinghuan was so shocked that her mind went blank. No, I won't admit it. I'll never admit that His Royal Highness is in love with Feng Wu. Never. Zhuo Qinghuan put a hand on her chest, and the dull pain made her want to cry. His Royal Highness must be in love with Feng Wu's good looks. That's right. It's only her looks that he's into. The Empress Dowager was almost as furious as Zhuo Qinghuan was. Chapter 25:13, It's Not Your Call. Chapter 25:13, It's Not Your Call. Somehow, the Empress Dowager felt as if her dear grandson was being taken away from her. She grabbed Jun Linyuan's hand and shook her head. Jun, we can't have her. She'll bring you so much trouble. She was certain that Feng Wu was using Jun Linyuan, and she couldn't wait for Feng Wu to disappear. There was no way she would let Feng Wu anywhere near her grandson. But the Crown Prince. He looked at the Empress Dowager and made an announcement. He said calmly, It's not your call. Someone chuckled. This time it was Emperor Wu. He feared that his mother would hear her, so he quickly turned to the other side. The Empress Dowager had been bullying him all this time, but now, she couldn't do anything to Jun Linyuan. The Empress Dowager was so shocked. She didn't know what to say. She stared at Jun Linyuan, but no words would come out of her mouth. Jun Linyuan then turned around and glared at Zhuo Qinghuan. Don't come to court anymore. He stopped Zhuo Qinghuan from trying to win over the Empress Dowager. Zhuo Qinghuan felt as if she had been slapped. I wasn't the one who told the Empress Dowager, she tried to explain, but she was talking to the Crown Prince. He was Jun Linyuan. He didn't listen to excuses. That was apart from Feng Wu's excuses. He looked at Zhuo Qinghuan, as if she were a total stranger. Zhuo Qinghuan's heart sank. Jun Linyuan left before she could say another word. He walked away just like that. As soon as he was gone, the air didn't feel so frigid anymore. Jun Wuxia was the first to react. She glared at Zhuo Qinghuan. Didn't you say that my brother is madly in love with you? Does it look like he's infatuated? Empress Duga wanted to smack Jun Wuxia. Why would she say such a thing? However, Empress Duga's attitude towards Zhuo Qinghuan had also changed. She thought highly of Zhuo Qinghuan, because, apart from being the sacred lady of Firmament Palace, and having the true phoenix blood, the Crown Prince was also supposed to be madly in love with her. Such humiliation. Zhuo Qinghuan swayed, and fell to the floor. She had fainted. Qinghuan. Mrs. Zhuo and Empress Duga both rushed to her side. All people sympathized with the weak. If Zhuo Qinghuan had stormed off, no one would be impressed, but now that she had passed out, people felt sorry for her. The Empress Dowager hated Feng Wu so much that she was almost out of her mind. An enemy's enemy was a friend. Therefore, she liked Zhuo Qinghuan very much now. Master Chu, do something! The Empress Dowager shouted at Master Chu. Master Chu rubbed his nose. Poor Feng Wu. She wasn't even here, but the Empress Dowager hated her so much. The incident was kept a secret from many people, but Feng Wu wasn't just anyone. Feng Sun saw everything. In Fallen Star Yard, Xiao Wu listened to me. It was hilarious. Chapter 25:14, How Troublesome. Chapter 25:14, How Troublesome. Feng Sun went all the way to Fallen Star Yard to tell Feng Wu what happened. Can you imagine? When the Empress Dowager said that it was Zhuo Qingwan who told her, Zhuo Qingwan looked like she wanted to kill someone. And when Boss Jun said that you were going to make yourself the compensation, the Empress Dowager and Zhuo Qingwan looked like they had seen a ghost. Zhuo Qingwan thought she could use that piece of information against you, but she failed. It was hilarious. Feng Wu rested her face on her hands and looked at Feng Sun curiously. Feng Wu asked, did His Royal Highness really humiliate Zhuo Qingwan in front of so many people? Feng Sun nodded. Yes, he did. Boss Jun doesn't care how the Empress Dowager feels, let alone Zhuo Qingwan. The most ridiculous thing is that Princess Jun Wuxia asked Zhuo Qingwan afterward, didn't you say that my brother is madly in love with you? Does it look like he's infatuated? Zhuo Qingwan was so furious that she passed out after that. Feng Sun was laughing, but Feng Wu felt troubled. Why is Zhuo Qingwan so stubborn? Other people would have admitted that Jun Linyuan is in love with me. I should have finished the 11th trial by now. But now she was stuck. Zhuo Qingwan knew what was going on, but she just wouldn't face the truth. Because of that, Feng Wu couldn't finish the trial. How annoying. But there was something else even more troublesome. That was Jun Linyuan's attitude toward her. She couldn't bring herself to think further, and tried to convince herself that they were fine being just friends. Feng Sun shook his head. Why was he even telling her all this? He had better things to do. He wanted to show Feng Wu what Boss Jun had done for her. He hoped that those things would move her heart. Feng Sun could see that the girl had hidden her feelings away. Just then they heard footsteps outside. Chaoga had arrived. There. She handed Feng Wu a letter. What's that? Feng Wu was perplexed. It's the registration letter for Year 4. Chaoga grinned at Feng Wu. I'm in Year 4 as well, and we'll be going together. Feng Wu said, when did you skip Year 3? Chaoga said, when you were obsessing over the Crown Prince. Feng Wu said, when did I ever do that? Chaoga said, fine, you didn't. You were just competing with Zhuo Qingwan. Therefore, I took the test on my own and I passed. I can go to Year 4 with you. Feng Wu shook her head and picked up the letter. She frowned. Tomorrow? Do I have to go? Feng Sun nodded. You do. Normally, the passageway to Year 4 only opens once a month. If you don't go tomorrow, you'll have to wait another month. Chapter 25:15 Who else? Chapter 25:15 Who else? Feng Sun grinned at Feng Wu. Of course, that restriction is only for ordinary people. If Boss Jun goes with you, that passageway is always open. All the things privilege could do. Feng Wu nodded. I'll go to Year 4. That is the War Academy. In the Imperial College, each year was given a different name, and Year 4 was the War Academy. Seeing that Feng Wu was going, Feng Sun became serious. Of course, you can go to the War Academy, but once you're there, just be a normal student. Don't get involved in anything else. Feng Wu asked, what do you mean by anything else? Feng Sun said sternly, you're not a student there yet, and there are things you can't be told yet. Once you're officially one of them, you'll know. I can't make an exception for you. Feng Wu's heart sank a little. By the sound of it, things could get quite serious. Feng Sun said, Boss Jun and I have graduated from Year 4, and we can't go back as students. Once you're there, you're on your own. Feng Wu nodded. Yup. Feng Sun said, what I can tell you is that the students there are all very aggressive. They love fighting. If someone picks on you, you can go to Chen Ziyan for help. He's the president of the Martial Arts Society. But don't get too close to him. In fact, don't go to him unless it's really necessary. Feng Wu was intrigued. Who was this Chen Ziyan? And why would he have such an effect on Feng Sun? And don't take part in their wars, said Feng Sun. No matter how persuasive they are, don't get involved. Wars? Feng Wu was perplexed. What wars? Feng Sun said sternly. I can't tell you more. I'm already telling you too much. Just keep in mind, don't join them. Feng Wu said, all right. She was more concerned about her tasks. The 11th trial still wasn't finished, And there was also the bonus task regarding Bao Air. She knew that things wouldn't always turn out the way she wanted. Sometimes it was up to fate. Remember to ask around about the immortal spiritual fruit for me, she reminded Feng Sun. Feng Sun nodded. Feng Wu wasn't going to stay in year 4 for too long. The 12 trials of love and Bao Air were the top priority. She would graduate from the War Academy in a month. Because she wouldn't be home for a month, she made sure that everything was covered. She felt quite safe now that 2 elders had become her friends, and that the White Fairy was guarding Fallen Star Yard. The next day, Feng Wu and Chaoge went to the assembly hall of the War Academy. The location surprised both of them, because it was a gambling house. It was Lucky House, the biggest gambling house in the empire. They followed the winding corridor and arrived at a courtyard. 2 people were already waiting there. Feng Wu recognized them right away. They weren't exactly friends. One was Gu Xingyuan, the 3rd son of the Gu family. The other one was Chu Junying, the girl who had a crush on Gu Xingyuan. Feng Wu wondered why Gu Xingyuan was here since she didn't think that he was capable enough. Chapter 25:16 Enemies 1. Chapter 25:16 Enemies 1. And how did Chu Junying get in? Hadn't the Gu family been arrested for treason? Why was Gu Xingyuan still a free man? Feng Wu wondered if she had missed something. She glanced at them again. Level 6 spiritual lords. Both Gu Xingyuan and Chu Junying had become level 6 spiritual lords. A teacher was already there to greet them. Feng Wu heard Gu Xingyuan address him as Mr. Han. Mr. Han was kind to Gu Xingyuan, but the look he gave Feng Wu wasn't very friendly. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Gu Xingyuan's eyes were filled with hatred when he looked at Feng Wu. But he soon looked away. Feng Wu knew that he was only temporarily hiding his hatred, which had to be gnawing at his heart now. She didn't dwell on it. She was a level 9 spiritual lord, and far more advanced than he was. Mr. Han, is everyone here? Can we leave now? Gu Xingyuan asked calmly, as if he didn't see Feng Wu. Mr. Han shook his head. Were more people coming? Just then there were footsteps outside. Everyone turned around. Miss Qingwan. Chu Junying cried out in surprise. She had met Zhuo Qingwan before and was a big fan. Finding Zhuo Qingwan here was a very big surprise. Gu Xingyuan was equally amazed. Mr. Han had remained nonchalant until Zhuo Qingwan showed up. He quickly walked up to her and greeted her respectfully. Miss Qingwan, you're finally here. Please. He then blocked Feng Wu's way. A portal opened. In Feng Wu's eyes, it looked a lot like an elevator. Chaoge was displeased when Mr. Han got in the way. Zhuo Qingwan had been trying to undermine Feng Wu recently, but Feng Wu had managed to defuse all the crises. Duan Chaoge despised Zhuo Qingwan for what she had done. However, the sacred lady still had a lot of fans. We got here first. We should go in before her. Chaoge was indignant that Xiao Wu had to make way for this fake fairy. Zhuo Qingwan couldn't be bothered to look at Chaoge or Feng Wu. It was as if her recent failures never existed. She was back to being the arrogant sacred lady. Chaoge was furious. What was that attitude? Mr. Han glanced at Chaoge and said, Who gave you permission to speak? Duan Chaoge stared in shocked silence. Mr. Han then bowed and made an inviting gesture to Zhuo Qingwan. He said obsequiously, This way please, Miss Qingwan. Zhuo Qingwan then walked through the portal. Chaoge stomped her foot. Feng Wu glanced at her. Calm down, Chaoge said. Who does she think she is? Did you see how she looked at you? I'm so. The portal was about to close. Mr. Han asked impatiently, Are you going in or not? That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.